The fire crackles softly, its amber glow casting flickering shadows across faces etched with stories older than memory itself. A child sits cross-legged, wide-eyed, watching as an elder raises a hand to the night sky. The elder's voice, raspy yet commanding, weaves words that seem to summon the stars closer, as though even the heavens listen. The story begins not with people, but with the spirits of wind and earth, water and fire, each shaping the world with purpose and power. In Native American tradition, life is not divided into what is seen and unseen. It is one, whole and breathing, pulsing with energy. To live is to walk alongside spirits, to hear their whispers in the rustle of leaves, to feel their breath in the storms that roll across the plains. The stories that have endured are not mere tales, but lifelines, binding people to the land, the animals, and the sky. The Thunderbird is born in such a context, a creature of might and mystery, whose wings are said to carry the roar of thunder and whose gaze pierces the fabric of the known world. Its story is more than words, it's a heartbeat, a shared rhythm between generations. Among the people of the plains, it is said that when the great clouds roll in and the horizon swells with the promise of rain, the Thunderbird is watching. It brings the storm not in anger but as a gift, delivering life to the parched earth. The crops grow tall, the rivers swell with vigor, and the people breathe thanks into the wind. Yet the Thunderbird is not gentle. Its power reminds all that balance is sacred and must be respected. For the coastal tribes, the Thunderbird is a guardian, its form etched into towering totem poles. Eyes wide, wings stretched, it watches over the villages, a silent protector against forces that might harm. The ocean's waves echo its cries, the wind carries its presence, and its spirit becomes a shield for the people who honor it. The world of Native American folklore brims with creatures like the Thunderbird, each holding lessons that go beyond the human. They are mirrors and messengers, showing humanity what it means to live in harmony and what it costs to stray from that path. The trickster coyote, the noble wolf, the watchful eagle, they all speak of traits that humans wrestle with: courage, cunning, greed, and grace. There is beauty in the interconnectedness of these beliefs. To listen to the story of one creature is to glimpse the story of all. The Thunderbird's thunderous flight is not just a spectacle, it is a call, a reminder of the balance between creation and destruction. The creatures of Native American folklore are never only what they appear to be. They are bridges, connecting the seen and unseen, the mundane and the divine, the past and the future. The elders who tell these stories are more than narrators, they are keepers of memory, guardians of wisdom that predates the written word. Each word they speak carries the weight of centuries, each pause a nod to the spirits they invoke. The listeners, whether children or grown warriors, feel these stories in their bones. The tales are not just heard, they are absorbed, becoming part of the listener's very being. The Thunderbird, like many other creatures, carries both a blessing and a warning. It offers rain but wields lightning. It nurtures the earth but reminds all of the consequences of imbalance. Its dual nature reflects the world itself, beautiful yet fierce, nurturing yet demanding. The land, the sky, and the creatures within them are not separate entities in this understanding. They are relatives, part of a family bound by respect and reciprocity. When the wind howls, it is not just weather, it is a voice. When the rivers rage, it is not just water, it is an emotion. When the Thunderbird spreads its wings, the world holds its breath, knowing that something sacred is in motion. The beauty of these stories lies in their layers. They are simple enough for a child to understand, yet profound enough to leave the wisest elders pondering. The Thunderbird story, like the storm it brings, is both a cleansing and a reckoning. It calls upon its listeners to honor what is beyond them and to remember that they are but a thread in the vast tapestry of existence. As the fire dwindles and the elder's voice softens, the child's gaze doesn't waver. There is a glimmer in those young eyes, not fear, not even awe, but something deeper. A knowing. A connection. The story isn't just a story, it is a pulse, a shared heartbeat between the people, the land, and the creatures that roam it. The sky above darkens further, thick with the promise of rain, and somewhere, far beyond the mountains, wings stir the air. The sky splits open with a roar that shakes the earth, and for a moment, the world holds its breath. Thunder rolls like an ancient drumbeat, its echoes carried far and wide. Lightning streaks across the heavens, carving jagged paths of brilliance in the dark. In the heart of the storm, there is a presence, a power that cannot be named, only felt. The Thunderbird is here. This is no ordinary bird. Its wings stretch wide enough to blot out the sun, and when they beat, they summon winds that howl through the mountains and sweep across the plains. The Thunderbird is not just a creature of myth, it is a force of nature, a being of immense strength that commands respect and awe. Across the vast lands of North America, stories of the Thunderbird soar high, carried by the voices of tribes who see in it something sacred. To some, it is a guardian, shielding their people from harm. To others, it is a harbinger of rain, bringing life to the soil and hope to the hungry. Yet, for all, it is a symbol of power, raw, unyielding, and majestic. The Plains tribes speak of the Thunderbird as a warrior, fierce and unrelenting. Its cry can shatter the silence of the prairies, and its strength can bend the will of the strongest winds. It is said to protect the people from great serpents that threaten to consume the world. In these battles, the Thunderbird is a savior, a protector who ensures the survival of life itself. Among the people of the Pacific Northwest, the Thunderbird holds a different kind of reverence. Its image is carved into towering totem poles, its wings forever outstretched as if in perpetual flight. Here, it is a symbol of nobility and strength, a creature whose presence demands honor and reverence. Its connection to the ocean is undeniable, its cries mingling with the roar of the waves, its spirit a guide for those who brave the waters. In desert lands, where the earth cracks under the relentless sun, the Thunderbird is a bringer of rain, a gift from the heavens. Its thunderous arrival signals the end of droughts, the beginning of renewal. The people watch the skies, their hearts swelling with hope, knowing that the Thunderbird's gift is both precious and fleeting. But the Thunderbird is more than a giver, it is also a reminder. Its storms cleanse the earth, but they can also destroy. Its lightning illuminates the darkest nights, but it can set forests ablaze. This duality makes it a figure of respect, not just admiration. The Thunderbird teaches that power is not only to be celebrated but also to be approached with caution. The stories of the Thunderbird carry a weight that cannot be ignored. They are woven with lessons about balance, courage, and humility. Across tribes, its image appears in countless forms, painted on hides, etched into rocks, and whispered in the flicker of flames. Each telling adds to its legacy, a reminder that the Thunderbird is not bound by time or place. Its power resonates with those who listen. Children sit wide-eyed as elders speak of its battles and blessings. Warriors call upon its strength before going to war. Farmers pray for its rain during dry seasons. The Thunderbird's presence is felt in every crack of thunder, every gust of wind, every drop of rain that falls from the sky. In the quiet moments after a storm, when the air is thick with the scent of rain and the land glistens under the returning sun, there is a sense of gratitude. The people know they have witnessed something sacred. The Thunderbird's power is not just in its might, but in the way it brings life and order to the chaos of the world. Across the many tribes who speak its name, the Thunderbird is more than a creature. It is a reminder of the unseen forces that shape the world, the delicate balance between strength and mercy, chaos and creation. Its wings do not just beat the air, they stir the hearts of those who hear its call. The sky grows quiet, the storm's rage subsiding, but the mark of the Thunderbird remains. Its spirit lingers in the softened earth, in the refreshed rivers, in the awestruck hearts of those who felt its presence. And somewhere, far above the clouds, it waits, ready to rise again when the world needs it most. The first sound was a heartbeat, a deep, resonant thrum that rippled through the void. In the stillness before the world took shape, this pulse grew louder, stronger, until it cracked the silence like a drum heralding a storm. From the heart of that primal rhythm, the Thunderbird emerged, its colossal wings unfurling with a power that could shake mountains and part the skies. It was born not of earth, nor of water, but of the storm itself, a being forged from the untamed chaos of creation. The old ones say that the Thunderbird's origins are as ancient as the first whisper of wind across the Great Plains. When the world was still raw, trembling under the weight of its own birth, the Great Spirit called upon a creature that could balance the fury of the elements. Thunder and lightning roared together, a tempest giving life to a guardian with the strength to control the chaos. The Thunderbird was not just a protector but a part of the very storm it tamed, a creature both mighty and wild, created to remind the world that beauty and destruction often share the same breath. In the lands of the Lakota, the story begins with a great battle. The earth was young, and its surface swarmed with monstrous serpents, their massive coils choking rivers and darkening the skies. The people cried out to Wakinyan, the Thunderbird, for salvation. It descended with wings that blotted out the sun and talons that sparked with fire. Lightning speared the serpents, and thunder rolled across the hills as the Thunderbird fought to free the earth. When the last serpent fell, rain poured down in torrents, cleansing the land. It is said that the Thunderbird's roar still echoes in the storms, a reminder of its triumph and its eternal vigilance. Farther north, the Kwakwaka'wakw people speak of a time when the Thunderbird rested upon the highest mountain, its massive body cloaked in clouds. From its perch, it watched over the oceans, protecting the people from giant sea spirits that sought to swallow their villages. With a single beat of its wings, the Thunderbird could send waves crashing onto the shore, a warning to those who dared threaten the balance of life. Its power was not just in its strength, but in its wisdom, a guardian who acted only when the world truly needed it. The Haida tale of a bond between the Thunderbird and the killer whale, two beings of immense power bound by respect. When the Thunderbird hunts, it lifts the great whales from the ocean with its talons, carrying them high into the stormy sky before releasing them into the waters below. This act is not one of cruelty but of necessity, a reminder of the cycle of life and the interconnectedness of all beings. In some stories, the Thunderbird is more than a protector, it is a creator, shaping the world with its storms. The Cherokee recount how the Thunderbird's lightning carved rivers into the land, its thunder shaping valleys and mountains. Rain fell from its wings, filling the rivers and lakes, breathing life into a barren earth. The Thunderbird's presence was not just felt but seen in the patterns of the land itself, a living testament to its role in creation. But the Thunderbird's origin is not always one of grandeur. Some tribes speak of a time when it was merely a bird, humble and ordinary, chosen by the Great Spirit for its courage. Faced with a world consumed by darkness and chaos, the bird agreed to carry the burden of the storm. It grew until its wings could span the heavens and its cries could awaken the skies. This transformation was not without pain, for with its newfound power came eternal responsibility. The Thunderbird story became one of sacrifice, a reminder that true strength often lies in choosing to serve. The stories differ across the vast lands, but a thread connects them all: the Thunderbird is more than a creature. It is a symbol of balance, of the dance between creation and destruction. Its storms bring life, but also remind us of nature's untamed power. Its lightning illuminates the darkest skies, yet its thunder warns of the consequences of imbalance. Even now, when the clouds gather and the wind howls, there is a sense of something ancient stirring in the air. The stories of the Thunderbird are not just tales of the past, they are alive in the pulse of the storm, in the flash of lightning, in the roar that shakes the earth. And as the storm rolls on, so too does the legacy of the Thunderbird, carrying with it the echoes of its mythical origins. The sky churns with a restless energy, thick clouds rolling like a sea in turmoil. The air crackles, heavy with a charge that hums against the skin. Then, it begins. A flash of light sears through the darkness, fierce and unrelenting, followed by a sound so powerful it shakes the earth to its core. In that moment, it feels as if the heavens themselves have come alive. The Thunderbird moves within this chaos. Its presence is not seen but felt, an ancient force threading through the storm, binding it together. The rain that falls in sheets, the winds that howl, and the lightning that splits the sky, they are not just random acts of nature but echoes of something greater. In the stories passed from parent to child, from elder to the young, the Thunderbird is not just a creature but the beating heart of the storm itself. The Ojibwe speak of how the Thunderbird ushers in the rains that nourish the earth. It is said that each beat of its wings scatters droplets across the land, turning dry, cracked soil into fertile ground. Without the Thunderbird's rains, the crops would wither and life would falter. Its presence in the storms is not just a gift, but a necessity, a lifeline woven into the fabric of existence. When lightning tears across the sky, it is said to be the Thunderbird's weapon, a spear of fire hurled to strike down wickedness and imbalance. Among the Sioux, there are tales of how the Thunderbird uses this power to protect the people, burning away threats both seen and unseen. Thunder, in its mighty roar, is the sound of the Thunderbird's voice, a warning, a call, or perhaps a promise that it is always watching, always guarding. But the connection between the Thunderbird and the storm runs deeper than protection or sustenance. To many, the storm is not simply weather, it is the voice of creation itself, speaking in rumbling tones and flashing light. The Thunderbird moves within that voice, shaping the world with its power. In Cherokee traditions, the Thunderbird's lightning is said to have carved out rivers, its thunder forming the mountains. The rain that follows fills the valleys, creating lakes and streams. These are not just acts of nature but deliberate, purposeful moments of creation, guided by the Thunderbird's unseen hand. Among the Salish, the Thunderbird is both feared and revered. Its storms can bring destruction, tearing through forests and flattening fields. Yet, they also renew the earth, washing away the old and making way for the new. The balance it brings is a reminder of life's duality, that every storm, no matter how fierce, carries within it the seeds of renewal. The Pacific Northwest tells of a time when the Thunderbird's storms were the only force capable of quenching the raging wildfires that threatened to consume the land. Its rains fell relentlessly, smothering the flames and leaving the earth steaming and fertile. For days, the skies were dark, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and charred wood. When the sun finally broke through, it revealed a land transformed, not destroyed, but reborn. The Thunderbird's connection to rain is as intimate as a heartbeat. In the arid lands of the Southwest, where every drop of water is precious, the Thunderbird's arrival is met with awe and gratitude. Its storms do not just bring rain, they bring life. The Hopi speak of how the Thunderbird listens to the prayers of the people, answering with thunderclouds that roll across the desert. To hear its voice is to know that life will go on, that the seeds will grow, and the rivers will flow once more. Yet, the Thunderbird's storms are not always kind. They are fierce, unpredictable, and unrelenting. The wind can tear apart homes, and the lightning can ignite forests. These moments are reminders of the Thunderbird's power, a force that demands respect. The people watch the storms with a mixture of fear and awe, knowing that the same force that brings life can also take it away. In the stillness that follows a storm, when the world seems to hold its breath, there is a sense of something sacred. The rain pools in the crevices of rocks, the air is heavy with the scent of wet earth, and the clouds part to reveal a sky washed clean. It is in these moments that the Thunderbird's presence is most deeply felt, not in its roar, but in the quiet it leaves behind. The stories of the Thunderbird are etched into the rhythms of the natural world. Every clap of thunder, every streak of lightning, every drop of rain carries its legacy. It is not just a figure of myth, but a living force, as real as the storm and as eternal as the sky. The sky was a canvas of gold and crimson, painted by a setting sun that seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for something extraordinary. The winds fell silent, the earth still. In this sacred pause, a force beyond comprehension stirred, a connection so ancient and vast that it seemed to hum through the very bones of the world. The Thunderbird was not alone. Its immense power, its dominion over storms and skies, was not an isolated phenomenon but part of a greater web of existence. At the center of this web sat the Great Spirit, the eternal source of life, balance, and everything unseen yet deeply felt. Their relationship was not one of master and servant, but of shared purpose, a bond as profound as the stars that guide travelers at night. The Great Spirit, known by many names across the tribes, is the pulse of creation itself. It is said to be the breath in the wind, the fire in the sun, the soul of the rivers. And within its infinite reach, the Thunderbird held a unique place. Not as a mere creature of power, but as a chosen guardian, tasked with maintaining harmony between the earth and the heavens. In the stories whispered around sacred fires, there is a tale of how the Thunderbird came to be. The Great Spirit, seeing a world teetering between chaos and order, called upon a being that could embody the strength of the skies. The Thunderbird was formed from the raw essence of storms, its wings crafted from lightning, its eyes blazing with the fire of the sun. It was given the storm's fury and the rain's mercy, a duality that mirrored the Great Spirit's own balance of creation and destruction. The Lakota tell of how the Thunderbird is the Great Spirit's enforcer, a warrior sent to confront forces that threaten life's delicate balance. When evil rises, whether in the form of monstrous creatures or human greed, the Thunderbird descends, its talons crackling with the Great Spirit's will. But its power is not blind. It does not strike without cause, for the Great Spirit has imbued it with wisdom as vast as the skies it commands. Among the Haudenosaunee, the Thunderbird is seen as a mediator, bridging the gap between the earthly and the divine. In their stories, it carries the prayers of the people to the Great Spirit, its thunderous cries a language only the divine can understand. When the rains fall after a long drought, it is said that the Thunderbird has pleaded with the Great Spirit on behalf of the earth. The Kwakwaka'wakw people believe that the Thunderbird is not just a servant of the Great Spirit, but its partner in creation. Together, they shape the world, carving rivers and raising mountains. The Great Spirit provided the vision, and the Thunderbird carried it out with the force of its storms. The earth's beauty, its peaks and valleys, its roaring waters and tranquil skies, is a testament to their shared artistry. But their relationship is not without tension. The Great Spirit is infinite, all-encompassing, while the Thunderbird, though powerful, is bound by the storms it commands. Some tribes tell of moments when the Thunderbird's storms grew too fierce, threatening to overwhelm the balance it was meant to protect. In these times, the Great Spirit intervenes, calming the winds and taming the lightning, a reminder that even the mightiest must be held accountable. The Cherokee speak of a sacred covenant between the Thunderbird and the Great Spirit, a promise that the Thunderbird will use its power not for destruction, but for balance. It is said that when the Thunderbird flies too close to the sun, testing the limits of its might, the Great Spirit whispers a single word, and the Thunderbird retreats, humbled by the infinite wisdom of its creator. In moments of quiet, when the storm has passed and the world feels new, the Thunderbird is said to commune with the Great Spirit. Its cries, though fierce, are filled with reverence, a reminder of its place in the grand tapestry of existence. The Great Spirit listens, not with ears, but with the essence of all that is, a silent dialogue that shapes the rhythm of the world. Yet, there is a deeper mystery in their bond, one that even the oldest stories struggle to articulate. It is the idea that the Thunderbird is not separate from the Great Spirit, but an extension of it, a manifestation of its will, given form and purpose. The storm is not just the Thunderbird's domain, it is the Great Spirit's voice, carried on wings of lightning. The people watch the skies, feeling this connection in every roll of thunder and flash of light. They see the Thunderbird not as a distant figure, but as a reminder of the Great Spirit's presence in their lives. When the rains come, nourishing the earth, they feel gratitude not just for the storm, but for the divine force that guides it. And so, the relationship between the Thunderbird and the Great Spirit is woven into the fabric of existence itself, a bond that shapes the skies, the earth, and all that lies between. The storm continues, its rhythm endless, its purpose eternal, as the Thunderbird soars in harmony with the force that gave it life. The wind swept across the open plains, carrying the scent of wild grasses and the faint promise of rain. Beneath a sky heavy with clouds, an elder's voice broke the stillness, rich and resonant, weaving a story that had lived for generations. Eyes of young and old alike were fixed on the fire's dancing flames, the flickering light casting shadows that seemed to move with the story itself. Long ago, before the earth was as we know it, the world was in chaos. The sky raged with storms, and the earth trembled under the weight of restless spirits. Among the Lakota, it is said that the Thunderbird came to restore balance. Its cry was a command that stilled the wild winds, its lightning a blade that struck down the forces of destruction. The elder's voice grew quieter, almost reverent, as they described the moment when the Thunderbird descended from the clouds. Its wings stretched across the sky, each feather shimmering with the power of storms. Its eyes, glowing like embers, pierced the darkness, and with one mighty flap of its wings, the rains came. The land, parched and broken, drank deeply, and life began to stir once more. For the Dakota, the Thunderbird is a figure of immense power, both feared and revered. One tale speaks of a time when a terrible serpent threatened the people, poisoning their waters and devouring their livestock. The serpent, with scales as black as night and eyes that burned with hatred, was unstoppable. The people prayed to Wakantanka, the Great Spirit, who sent the Thunderbird to confront the beast. The battle shook the earth. Lightning clashed against the serpent's thick scales, and thunder roared like the drumbeats of war. The serpent coiled and struck, but the Thunderbird was faster, its talons tearing through the air. The storm raged for days, the skies dark as night, until finally, the Thunderbird's lightning pierced the serpent's heart. Its body fell into the river, and the water ran red before clearing, clean and pure once more. Another story tells of a young warrior who sought the Thunderbird's favor. He climbed the highest peak, his body battered by the relentless winds, his heart steadfast in its purpose. The warrior carried no weapons, only his prayers and the hope that the Thunderbird would hear him. At the summit, he stood beneath the storm, the lightning illuminating his form. When the Thunderbird appeared, it was not as a creature of fury but of grace. It landed with a quiet power, its wings folding like the petals of a flower. The warrior knelt, offering his words of gratitude and reverence. The Thunderbird listened, its eyes glowing softly, before gifting the warrior a single feather. The feather, they say, carried the strength of the storm and the wisdom of the skies, and the warrior became a leader of great renown, his people thriving under his guidance. The Plains tribes often speak of the Thunderbird not just as a protector but as a teacher. Its storms are lessons, its thunder a voice that speaks truths only the wise can hear. Among the Lakota, it is believed that those who understand the Thunderbird's ways gain insight into the balance of life, the harmony of destruction and creation, of chaos and order. One tale, passed from mother to child, tells of a drought that stretched on for years. The earth cracked, the rivers dried, and the people grew desperate. They turned to their elders, who led them to a sacred place where the Thunderbird was said to rest. They sang songs of old, their voices rising into the still air, their prayers carried upward by the smoke of their fires. The storm began as a whisper, a gentle breeze that stirred the grasses. Then, the clouds gathered, dark and heavy, and the first drops of rain fell. The people wept, their tears mixing with the rain, as the Thunderbird appeared in the sky. It circled above them, its presence immense yet comforting, and when it finally disappeared into the clouds, the rains continued, nourishing the land and restoring life. There are also tales of the Thunderbird's wrath, warnings of what happens when balance is broken. The Dakota tell of a village that grew greedy, hoarding resources and ignoring the needs of their neighbors. The Thunderbird watched, its anger building with each act of selfishness. One night, as the people slept, the storm came. Lightning struck the village, setting it ablaze, and the rains that followed swept away the ashes. The survivors, humbled and repentant, rebuilt their homes, this time with open hands and open hearts. They say the Thunderbird watched over them, its storms now gentle, a reminder of the lessons learned. As the elder's voice faded, the fire crackled softly, and the people sat in thoughtful silence. Above them, the sky stretched vast and endless, a reminder of the Thunderbird's domain. Its stories were not just tales, but truths etched into the land, the wind, and the hearts of those who listened. The storm, they knew, would come again, its power as eternal as the plains themselves. The ocean was restless, its waves pounding against jagged cliffs that loomed like ancient sentinels. Overhead, the sky churned with storm clouds, thick and ominous. In the distance, a lone figure stood at the water's edge, head bowed, hands raised to the heavens. The wind tore at their cloak, but their voice, strong and unwavering, rose above the roar of the sea. It was a plea, a call to the Thunderbird. Among the Haida and Tlingit, the Thunderbird was more than a legend, it was a force that bridged the worlds of the natural and the supernatural. Its wings carried the weight of the storm, its cry summoned lightning, and its eyes burned with the fury of the heavens. Yet, there was a deep respect for its dual nature, the power to destroy and the power to provide. One story, told in whispers around the fires, speaks of a time when the sea grew too bold. Waves higher than the tallest cedar trees swept inland, destroying villages and swallowing forests. The people, desperate and terrified, turned to their shamans, who journeyed to the sacred mountains to call upon the Thunderbird. The storm that followed was unlike any other. The sky split open, and the Thunderbird appeared, its massive form silhouetted against flashes of lightning. It soared over the ocean, its wings creating winds that pushed the waves back. When it struck the water with its talons, the waves stilled, the sea humbled before its power. The Thunderbird then brought rain, cleansing the land and restoring balance. In Haida stories, the Thunderbird is also a hunter, locked in an eternal battle with the orca. The two creatures are equals in strength and cunning, their clashes shaking the earth and sea alike. One tale tells of a great famine, when the people had no food, and the orca dominated the waters, driving away the fish. The Thunderbird, hearing the cries of the hungry, descended from its perch in the mountains. It plunged into the ocean, its talons piercing the waves, and seized the orca in a battle that raged for days. When the Thunderbird emerged, the orca lay defeated, and the waters teemed with life once more. The people feasted, their songs of gratitude echoing across the shores. For the Tlingit, the Thunderbird is often depicted as a guardian, watching over those who honor the balance of the earth. One story tells of a young boy who wandered too far from his village, drawn by the call of the forest. He stumbled upon a clearing where the Thunderbird's feathers lay scattered, glistening like silver in the moonlight. The boy, mesmerized, gathered the feathers, unaware of their significance. When he returned to his village, the sky darkened, and the winds howled. The Thunderbird appeared, its eyes glowing with anger. The boy's elders quickly understood the boy's mistake and led him back to the clearing, where they performed a ceremony of atonement. The Thunderbird watched as the boy returned the feathers, his hands trembling but steady. The storm ceased, and the Thunderbird bowed its head, a silent acknowledgement of their respect. From that day on, the boy grew to be a great shaman, his wisdom rooted in the lesson of that night. Among coastal tribes, the Thunderbird is often depicted in totem poles, its wings outstretched, its beak sharp and fierce. These carvings are not merely art, they are stories, frozen in time, reminding the people of the Thunderbird's presence. One pole tells the story of a chief who sought the Thunderbird's help to protect his village from invaders. The chief climbed a mountain, fasting and praying, until the Thunderbird appeared. It offered its strength, and when the invaders came, the skies darkened, and lightning struck their ships. The invaders fled, leaving the village untouched. The totem pole, carved in honor of the Thunderbird, still stands, a testament to its protection. Yet, not all encounters with the Thunderbird are acts of salvation. There are stories of those who dared to disrespect its domain, who hunted in its sacred mountains or mocked its storms. For them, the Thunderbird's wrath was swift and unforgiving. One tale tells of a group of hunters who laughed at the warnings of their elders and ventured into the Thunderbird's territory. They returned with game, boasting of their defiance, but that night, the storm came. Lightning struck their homes, and the wind tore through their village. When the storm passed, the hunters were gone, their fates a warning to those who might forget the Thunderbird's power. The firelight flickered in the storyteller's eyes as they paused, letting the weight of the story settle. The wind outside carried the sound of the waves, relentless and eternal, a reminder of the Thunderbird's presence. In the hearts of those who listened, the tales lived on, a connection to a force that was as real as the sea and sky. The desert stretched endlessly, a sea of golden sands and jagged red rock under a sky that burned during the day and froze at night. There, in the stillness, whispers of the Thunderbird carried through the wind, mingling with the rustle of sagebrush and the distant cry of a coyote. To the Navajo, Hopi, and Apache, the Thunderbird was not merely a tale but a spirit that embodied forces both feared and revered, its presence etched into the very fabric of their existence. In the vast deserts, where storms were rare but ferocious, the Thunderbird's arrival was heralded by rolling thunder that shook the ground. For the Navajo, this wasn't just weather, it was a declaration. The Thunderbird moved across the sky with the authority of a chieftain, its wings beating a rhythm that called the rain. Each clap of thunder was a reminder of its dominion, a force that could nurture the parched earth or reduce it to dust. A story told among the Navajo speaks of a drought so severe that the rivers turned to dry cracks and the crops withered into brittle husks. The people, desperate and weary, turned to their medicine man, who climbed to the top of a mesa to call upon the Thunderbird. As he sang, the sky darkened, the wind screamed, and the Thunderbird appeared, its eyes blazing like fire against the gathering storm. The rain that followed wasn't gentle. It came in torrents, washing over the land with an almost violent generosity. The rivers filled, the crops revived, and the people sang their gratitude, knowing that the same power that saved them could destroy them if disrespected. The medicine man's voice became a cautionary hymn, a lesson that the Thunderbird's gifts came with warnings etched into the storm. For the Hopi, the Thunderbird wasn't just a bringer of rain, it was a guardian of balance. The desert, vast and unyielding, was a world of opposites, blistering days and frigid nights, abundance and scarcity. The Thunderbird lived in that balance, its wings stretching between the sky and the earth, connecting the worlds of the spiritual and the physical. One Hopi tale tells of a young boy who wandered into the desert during a time of famine. Lost and alone, he stumbled upon a massive shadow that seemed to swallow the sun. The Thunderbird, its feathers gleaming like obsidian, stood before him, a figure both majestic and terrifying. The boy knelt, offering the only thing he had, his prayer. The Thunderbird listened, and with a single beat of its wings, the skies opened. Rain fell not in chaos, but in measured drops, each one deliberate, each one bringing life to the cracked earth. When the boy returned to his village, the people saw the change in his eyes. He spoke of the Thunderbird's power and its demand for respect, and his words became part of the Hopi's enduring teachings about humility in the face of nature's might. The Apache saw the Thunderbird as a warrior, a being whose storms were battles fought in the heavens. Lightning was its weapon, striking with precision and fury, while the thunder was its battle cry. For them, the Thunderbird was not a distant figure but an ally, a protector that could be called upon in times of strife. One Apache legend tells of a warrior who sought the Thunderbird's strength to defeat an enemy threatening his people. Standing on a cliff's edge, he raised his spear to the stormy sky, shouting his vow to honor the Thunderbird if granted its power. The storm responded, and a bolt of lightning struck the spear, splitting it but leaving the warrior unharmed. The battle that followed was fierce, but the warrior moved like the storm itself, swift and unrelenting. His people were saved, and the warrior's story became part of their history, a testament to the Thunderbird's might and its willingness to aid those who showed courage and respect. Yet, there were also stories of those who challenged the Thunderbird's authority, who thought themselves immune to its reach. The desert remembers those tales too, the warnings carved into the very rocks. One such story tells of a group who mocked the Thunderbird, claiming its power was a myth. They laughed at the thunder, ignored the warnings of their elders, and set out to hunt in forbidden lands. The storm that followed was merciless. Lightning tore through the sky, and winds lifted the sands, creating a wall that swallowed everything. When the storm passed, nothing remained of the hunters but whispers carried by the wind. The desert, vast and unyielding, is a keeper of stories. In its silence, the Thunderbird's voice can still be heard in the crack of thunder and the roar of rain. To the Navajo, Hopi, and Apache, these stories are not relics, they are warnings, blessings, and reminders of a presence that is as eternal as the sands. The next storm always carries the possibility of the Thunderbird's return, a promise and a threat bound together in the heartbeat of the desert. The sky darkened without warning, a suffocating stillness settling over the land. Animals paused mid-stride, ears flicking toward the heavens as if they could sense the tension crackling in the air. Then it came, a low rumble, distant at first, but growing louder, shaking the earth itself. The people turned their eyes upward, knowing what was coming. Not just rain, not just wind, but the will of the Thunderbird, a force that no one could tame. When the Thunderbird spread its massive wings, the very atmosphere seemed to shift. The clouds moved with purpose, gathering in a swirling mass as though summoned by an unseen hand. Lightning danced along the edges of its feathers, and the first drops of rain hit the ground like a whispered promise of chaos and renewal. For some, the Thunderbird's storms were a blessing, the only thing standing between survival and ruin. To the people of the plains, who depended on the rains to feed their crops and fill their rivers, the Thunderbird was life itself. But they also knew that the same wings that brought the rain could bring destruction. If the Thunderbird grew angry, its storms could rip the earth apart, turning rivers into torrents and flattening fields in an instant. A story from the plains speaks of a time when the Thunderbird appeared during the worst drought in memory. The rivers had dried to a trickle, and the people whispered prayers into the wind, hoping their voices would carry to the storm's master. Days passed with no answer, the sky remaining clear and merciless. Then, one evening, the horizon turned black. Thunder cracked so loudly that it felt as though the earth itself might split open. The rain that fell was no gentle shower but a torrential downpour, each drop hitting the ground with the weight of salvation. Crops sprang back to life, rivers swelled, and the people sang praises to the Thunderbird, their savior. But not all storms were so kind. In the forests of the Pacific Northwest, the Thunderbird was known for its ferocity, its control over the elements unmatched. The winds it summoned could topple ancient trees, and its lightning strikes could ignite entire hillsides. For the Haida and Tlingit, the Thunderbird was a protector, but it was also a reminder of nature's fury, a force that demanded respect. One Haida tale tells of a village that ignored the Thunderbird's warnings. The elders had cautioned against cutting too deeply into the forest, warning that the Thunderbird guarded those lands. But the people, desperate for wood, dismissed the stories as mere superstition. When the storm came, it wasn't gradual. It tore through the forest like a living thing, uprooting trees and sending debris flying through the air. The villagers fled, their cries swallowed by the wind, and when the storm finally passed, nothing remained of their homes but scattered fragments. The elders' words were etched into the survivors' memories, a lesson paid for in ruin. The Thunderbird's control over storms wasn't just a display of power, it was a message. The lightning that split the sky wasn't random, it struck with purpose, a warning to those who dared to challenge its authority. Thunder wasn't just noise, it was a voice, a command that echoed across the land. In the deserts, where rain was a rare and precious gift, the Thunderbird's storms were almost mythical in their intensity. The Navajo spoke of how the Thunderbird could call forth rain with a single beat of its wings, its cry piercing the heavens. But they also knew that such power came with a cost. One Navajo tale tells of a young boy who prayed for rain during a time of great need. He climbed to the highest cliff, his voice trembling as he called out to the Thunderbird. The storm that answered was unlike anything the people had ever seen. Rain poured from the sky in sheets, filling the dry riverbeds and quenching the thirsty earth. But the storm didn't stop. It raged on, flooding the fields and threatening to sweep away the village. The boy, realizing his mistake, climbed back to the cliff and begged the Thunderbird for mercy. The storm quieted, the clouds parting to reveal a sky streaked with the colors of the setting sun. The boy returned to his village, his tale a reminder of the Thunderbird's dual nature, a giver of life and a force of destruction. In every story, the Thunderbird's storms carried meaning. They weren't random acts of nature but deliberate displays of a power that demanded to be acknowledged. For the people who lived beneath its shadow, the Thunderbird was both a protector and a punisher, its storms a reminder that life itself was a delicate balance. As the rains fell and the winds howled, those who understood the Thunderbird's ways would stand in awe, knowing they were witnessing something far greater than themselves. They would feel the earth tremble beneath their feet, hear the roar of the thunder as it echoed across the land, and see the lightning that split the sky like a divine hand writing its will across the heavens. And as the storm passed, leaving the world renewed and transformed, they would know that the Thunderbird had spoken. The air was still, the earth silent, as though holding its breath. The sacred land stretched out before the people, untouched, ancient, and full of life, but there was a tension in the atmosphere, as though something was watching, something powerful. Then, high above, the first crack of thunder split the sky, and in that moment, the people knew. The Thunderbird had come. It wasn't just a storm, it was a warning. The Thunderbird, in all its grandeur, had taken to the skies, not for destruction, but to protect. Its massive wings beat with a force that echoed across the mountains, sending ripples through the very air, a reminder of its role as guardian of the land. The lands that belonged to the people, sacred and unspoiled, would not be taken by anyone. Not by invaders, not by the careless, and certainly not by those who did not understand the weight of the earth beneath their feet. In the stories passed down from generation to generation, the Thunderbird was seen as the protector of the land, its fierce power a barrier against those who would harm the earth and the creatures that roamed it. It wasn't just a bird, it was the embodiment of nature's fury, its wings sweeping across the sky as it kept watch over sacred places. Places where the people's ancestors had walked, where the spirits of the past still lingered. The Lakota people, among many others, spoke of the Thunderbird as a guardian of the sacred hills, where the spirits of the warriors rested. One tale tells of a group of settlers who came to the hills, seeking to carve out a life for themselves, heedless of the land's sanctity. They did not listen when the elders warned them, did not understand the sacredness of the soil they stood on. But the Thunderbird understood. One evening, as the settlers worked their fields, a great storm appeared on the horizon. At first, it was a gentle wind, the kind that promised relief from the heat. But then, the clouds thickened, and with each beat of the Thunderbird's wings, the wind grew stronger, until it was a roaring tempest. Lightning flashed, lighting up the sky, and thunder boomed like the voice of the earth itself. The settlers tried to flee, but the storm was too fierce, too overwhelming. The Thunderbird's wrath was swift and unforgiving, sweeping through their camp, tossing their tents aside, and breaking their tools. When the storm passed, the land was once again quiet, untouched, except for the remnants of the settlers, scattered and broken. The message was clear: some lands are not meant to be taken. The Thunderbird would not allow it. In the forests of the Pacific Northwest, the Tlingit people tell a similar story. There, the Thunderbird protected the sacred groves, where the old trees whispered secrets of the past. A greedy hunter, believing he could take what he wanted without consequence, entered the grove with an axe. He believed the trees were just trees, the land was just land. But he did not know the Thunderbird watched over them. The moment his axe bit into the first tree, the sky darkened, and the winds began to pick up. The hunter paused, confused, sensing something was wrong, but he continued, driven by his greed. Then, with a deafening crack, the Thunderbird struck. A bolt of lightning split the sky, illuminating the forest in an instant, and the hunter was struck down by the very storm he had awakened. The Tlingit say that the sound of that thunder was the Thunderbird's roar, and it was a warning to all who would harm the sacred lands. The trees, like the land, were not just objects to be used, they were living beings, full of life, full of spirit. And those who didn't understand that would pay the price. The Thunderbird did not show mercy to those who took without respect. It was a protector, a fierce guardian who stood watch over the land, ensuring that only those with good intentions would pass. The Apache, in their own traditions, tell of the Thunderbird's vigilance over the desert, watching the horizon for those who would disturb the balance of life. It was said that when travelers came to the desert with greed in their hearts, believing that the earth could be bent to their will, the Thunderbird would rise up and send them away. One such story speaks of a group of men who sought to strip the land of its precious minerals, unaware that the land was sacred, not to be mined or exploited. As they dug into the earth, the skies grew heavy, and the Thunderbird appeared, darkening the sun with its enormous wings. Lightning struck the men's tools, shattering them into pieces. The wind howled, the earth rumbled beneath their feet, and the men, realizing the power they had angered, fled, never to return. The Thunderbird's role as a protector of sacred lands was not just about physical force, it was about preserving balance. The land was not there to be conquered, but to be honored. To disturb it was to disturb the natural order, and that, the Thunderbird would never allow. It was a lesson passed down, through stories and songs, through rituals and prayers. The Thunderbird was not just a creature of myth, it was a reminder of the deep connection between the land and the people who walked upon it. It was a symbol of the sacred bond, one that could not be broken by greed or ignorance. For as long as the Thunderbird soared in the sky, the land would remain protected. When the storm clouds gathered and the winds howled, the people knew it was not just a sign of rain or thunder. It was a reminder that the Thunderbird was watching over them, guarding the sacred earth they had been entrusted to protect. And as long as the Thunderbird flew, the land would remain safe. The sky was clear, the earth still. The land seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to stir it to life. Then, without warning, the wind began to shift. A deep rumble echoed through the heavens, and the skies darkened as though the very world was preparing for something monumental. It was the beat of enormous wings, a sign that the Thunderbird was near. In the myths passed down by the ancestors, the Thunderbird was not merely a figure of destruction or protection. It was a force of nature, shaping the very cycles that governed life on Earth. Its mighty wings marked the transition between seasons, its thunder the herald of change. The Thunderbird wasn't just a creature of myth, it was the pulse of the land itself, moving with the rhythm of the earth. With every passing season, the Thunderbird's power could be felt in the air, the shift of winds carrying whispers of its presence. When the first chill of autumn settled over the land, the Thunderbird would rise from its resting place among the clouds. With the beat of its wings, the world would change. The trees would shed their leaves, and the animals would begin to prepare for the coming cold. It was the Thunderbird's call that ushered in the season of rest, signaling the earth to slow its pace, to pause and prepare for the winter. But it wasn't just a symbol of fall's approach. The Thunderbird was also a harbinger of spring. When the earth had rested long enough and the frost had finally melted away, the Thunderbird's thunder would crack the silence of winter. With its wings, it would send the rains to water the earth, allowing the seeds to sprout, the grasses to grow, and life to return to the land. The people, who had waited through the cold months, would look to the sky and know that the Thunderbird had come again, bringing with it the promise of renewal and growth. The birds, the flowers, the trees, they all felt the Thunderbird's presence, its influence over the land. The harvests, too, were tied to the Thunderbird's power. The people would watch as the storm clouds gathered, signaling the return of the great bird's wings. It was during these storms that the most fertile lands would receive their gifts, the rains needed to nourish the crops. The Thunderbird, in its magnificent flight, would stir the clouds, bringing the rain that the earth so desperately needed to grow. In the plains, where the land stretched wide and the winds howled across the open fields, the Lakota people would speak of the Thunderbird's role in ensuring the harvest. When the crops grew tall, heavy with promise, it was the Thunderbird who made sure they would not wither under the harsh sun or the cruel winds. Its storms, far from being destructive, were the very thing that ensured the survival of the land's bounty. Its power was not just a force of nature, it was the breath of life itself. As the Thunderbird moved across the sky, it was said that it would stir the winds that swept across the crops, carrying with it the moisture needed to keep them healthy. The people knew that when the Thunderbird's thunder echoed in the sky, it was a reminder that the harvest would be plentiful. It was as if the Thunderbird's wings were not just beating with the winds, but with the pulse of life itself. It was a sign that the cycle of seasons was complete, that the earth had done its work, and now it was time for the people to reap what had been sown. But the Thunderbird's role wasn't just as a provider, it was also a reminder of balance. The people knew that the Thunderbird, though it brought the rain and ensured the crop's survival, also controlled the elements. It would sometimes bring storms that ravaged the land, forcing the people to wait for the winds to calm, to prepare for the challenges that came with the earth's ever-changing rhythms. The Thunderbird's storms were not just a sign of life, they were also a reminder of nature's power and the need to respect it. The seasons were not always kind, but they were necessary for the balance of all things. Through every season, the Thunderbird's wings would beat in the sky, and the people would look to the heavens, knowing that it was the Thunderbird that had the power to shape their world. It was said that the Thunderbird's thunder was the voice of the earth, echoing the changes that occurred, reminding the people of their place in the cycle of life. When the sun beat down and the crops withered, it was the Thunderbird's storms that brought the cooling rains. When the heat of summer seemed unbearable, the Thunderbird would call the winds to blow, bringing relief to the land below. The Thunderbird was the pulse of the land, the rhythm that moved with the seasons. It was a force that could not be ignored, for its presence was felt in every breeze, every thunderclap, and every rainfall. When the crops were plentiful, when the sky was clear, it was a sign that the Thunderbird had ensured the land's well-being. When the rains fell, when the winds howled, it was a reminder that the Thunderbird was still in the heavens, guiding the earth through its seasons. In the stories of the Haida and the Tlingit people of the Pacific Northwest, the Thunderbird's power over the weather was not just about the thunder, it was about the balance of nature itself. When the Thunderbird's wings beat, they sent waves of energy through the world, stirring the air, the rain, the wind. It was through its storms that the earth was refreshed, that the cycle of life was renewed. The Thunderbird's thunder echoed not just across the land, but through the very hearts of the people, a reminder that life was always in flux, always moving forward, always changing with the rhythm of the seasons. The Thunderbird's role in the cycle of seasons was not just as a bringer of rain, it was a reminder that the land was alive, that the earth was always moving, always shifting. The power of the Thunderbird was not just in its strength, it was in its ability to guide the land through the ever-turning wheel of time. And as the seasons changed, so too did the people, moving with the Thunderbird, learning to live in harmony with the earth's eternal rhythms. The ground shakes. The earth trembles beneath your feet. A deep, hollow roar rises from the bowels of the world, and you feel the very air pulse with the power of something ancient, something immense. The mountains shake, and the sky splits open in a blinding flash of light. The people, standing in awe and fear, know that it is no ordinary storm. It is the Thunderbird. And when it moves, the world moves with it. In the stories passed down through generations, the Thunderbird's presence is not confined to the skies alone. Its mighty wings are said to stir more than just the clouds, they reach deep into the earth, touching the core of the world itself. It is in the rumble of an earthquake, the eruption of a volcano, the strike of lightning that splits the sky. It is the Thunderbird's power, felt across the land in all its raw, unrelenting force. When the Thunderbird flies, it is said that the ground itself trembles beneath the weight of its wings. The sound of its thunder rumbles deep in the earth, shaking trees, stirring waters, and making the very mountains crack with the force of its power. To the people who lived in the shadow of these natural phenomena, the Thunderbird was both feared and revered. It was a reminder that the world was not a place of stillness, but of constant movement, of shifting ground, of the forces beneath the surface that shaped life. In the aftermath of an earthquake, when the ground had cracked and the land lay in ruins, the people would look to the sky and know what had happened. They knew that it was the Thunderbird, its wings sweeping through the heavens, that had caused the earth to quake. It was said that the Thunderbird's thunder was not just sound, it was the shaking of the very earth, the shifting of the land that mirrored the great bird's power. The earth responded to the Thunderbird's presence, cracking and trembling, as if acknowledging the bird's dominance over both sky and earth. But the Thunderbird's power was not just limited to the shaking of the ground. When the earth itself erupted in a volcanic fury, when the mountains split and fire and ash rained down upon the land, it was said that the Thunderbird was once again at work. The eruption, like an unstoppable force, was the result of the bird's power in action. With every beat of its wings, the Thunderbird's energy surged through the earth, sending fire and molten rock spilling from the mountains. The people watched in awe and fear as the sky darkened, knowing that the bird was causing the earth to erupt in a display of primal force. The stories speak of the Thunderbird's role as a protector, but its protection was not always gentle. Sometimes, the Thunderbird would strike the earth with such force that it caused the ground to shift violently, destroying all in its path. But in these moments of destruction, the Thunderbird's actions were seen not as punishment, but as part of a larger, cosmic cycle. The Thunderbird's power, though terrifying, was necessary for the land to grow and evolve. In the aftermath of the eruption, the people would rebuild, knowing that the earth had been reshaped, that life would return in new forms. The Thunderbird's power, though devastating, was part of the natural order, a reminder of the delicate balance between creation and destruction. And then there was the lightning. The sharp crack of thunder that splits the sky, the flash of blinding light that strikes with the force of 1,000 suns, this, too, was the Thunderbird's doing. In the stories of the people, lightning was not a random event. It was the Thunderbird, flying across the heavens, its wings cutting through the clouds with such force that the sky erupted in a burst of light. The crackling energy of lightning was said to be the Thunderbird's breath, its power made visible to all who watched. When the lightning struck, it was a sign that the Thunderbird was near, its wings beating against the clouds, stirring the very air with its raw, untamed energy. The people would often speak of the Thunderbird's lightning as a gift, an electric energy that could purify the earth and cleanse the sky. The lightning, with its searing power, was said to burn away the impurities in the world, making way for new growth and renewal. But it was also feared. For in the same way the Thunderbird could bring the rains to nourish the earth, it could also strike with deadly precision, tearing down the tallest trees and scorching the earth in its path. The lightning was both a blessing and a curse, a reminder of the Thunderbird's power to shape the world in ways both beautiful and terrifying. In the stories of the Tlingit, the Haida, and many other coastal tribes, the Thunderbird's connection to the natural world went beyond the skies. It was a creature that bridged the gap between the heavens and the earth, its power extending into the very fabric of the world. When the earth shook or the skies exploded with lightning, the people knew that it was the Thunderbird's influence at work. Its thunder was not just sound, it was the heartbeat of the world, the pulse of creation and destruction that kept the natural order in motion. The Thunderbird's power was felt not just in the sky, but in every crack of thunder, every rumble of the earth, every flash of lightning. It was a force that could not be ignored, a force that shaped the very foundation of the world. It was a reminder that life was not static, but always in motion, always shifting, always evolving. And in the thunder, the lightning, and the earthquakes, the Thunderbird's spirit could be felt, a reminder that the land itself was alive, constantly changing with the force of nature, and that the Thunderbird was the one who kept the balance, who ensured that the cycles of the earth would continue, no matter what. When the storm clouds gathered, when the winds began to howl, the people knew what was coming. The Thunderbird was near, its power stirring the heavens and the earth alike. It was the force that brought both destruction and renewal, the reminder that the world was alive, always shifting, always changing, always in motion. And through it all, the Thunderbird's thunder would echo, a song of the earth, a song of the skies, a song of life itself. The fire crackled in the heart of the village as the elder began to speak. Shadows danced across his face, and his voice carried the weight of generations. In his hand, he held a carving, a Thunderbird etched into wood, its wings stretched wide, its eyes fierce and unyielding. He raised it for all to see, and the air seemed to grow heavier, as if the carving itself carried the power of storms. The Thunderbird, the elder began, his voice steady, is more than a creature of the skies. It is strength itself, carved into the heart of our people, painted in our stories, etched into the very bones of who we are. Eyes widened as the younger ones leaned closer, their breath caught between awe and anticipation. The carving was small, but its presence was immense. The curves of its wings seemed to ripple with unseen energy, and its talons, though still in wood, appeared ready to strike. The elder's voice grew softer, and the people hung on every word. "Strength does not always roar," he said. "Sometimes, it comes as a quiet resolve, like the Thunderbird waiting in the clouds, unseen but always there, always watching." His hand moved gently over the carving, and it was as if he was touching something sacred. In the art of the people, the Thunderbird was a symbol that could not be tamed. On totem poles, it stood at the top, its wings sheltering the stories below. Each line carved into its form told a tale of storms faced and victories won. The poles, tall and proud, rose against the sky, their presence commanding respect. They whispered of a strength that could weather any storm, a power that could never be broken. And yet, the Thunderbird was more than an image. It lived in the stories told around the fire, stories that turned words into living things. The people spoke of how the Thunderbird could lift mountains with its wings, how it would descend in times of great need, its eyes blazing like lightning, its cry shaking the heavens. They spoke of how its presence could turn fear into courage, how it reminded them that even in the darkest storm, there was strength to be found. The stories weren't just tales, they were lifelines. During times of famine, when the land seemed to have forgotten its promise, the people would carve the Thunderbird into their tools, their homes, their hearts. It was said that the Thunderbird's image held a power of its own, that just seeing it could ignite a fire within, a reminder that strength was always within reach. And the Thunderbird did not belong to just one person, one family, or even one tribe. Its image was universal, its power shared across nations. Among the Haida, its feathers stretched across the skies in vivid reds and blacks, a guardian over their sacred lands. For the Lakota, it was a being that spoke of protection and might, its wings a shield against danger. For every hand that carved its image, for every voice that told its story, the Thunderbird became more than a symbol. It became a promise. Children, too young to understand the full weight of the stories, would trace the Thunderbird's shape with their fingers, their small hands learning the curves of its wings, the sharpness of its beak. They would sit wide-eyed as the elders described how the Thunderbird had once saved their people from certain destruction, how its cry had turned despair into hope. And even if they didn't yet understand the depth of those words, they felt it. They felt the strength that the Thunderbird carried, and they knew it was theirs, too. But strength is not always kind. The people knew this well. The Thunderbird, in all its power, could bring destruction as easily as it brought protection. Its storms could flood the land, its winds could tear apart what had taken years to build. And yet, even in this, there was respect. For the Thunderbird's strength was not cruel, it was honest. It reminded the people that true power could not be controlled, only honored. The elders often said that the Thunderbird chose to protect those who showed strength in their hearts. When the people carved its image, when they painted its feathers onto their shields, they were not just asking for protection, they were promising to be worthy of it. They were promising to face the storms in their lives with the same courage, the same fierce will, as the Thunderbird itself. The elder paused, his hand resting on the carving. Strength, he said, is not given. It is something we must find within ourselves. The Thunderbird reminds us of this. It reminds us that no matter how hard the wind blows, we can stand tall. No matter how fierce the storm, we can hold on. The fire crackled again, and the faces around it seemed brighter, as if the stories had kindled something within them. The elder placed the carving back into its place of honor, and the people sat in silence, their hearts heavy with the weight of the Thunderbird's power. But in the silence, there was also a hum, a vibration in the air that spoke of something more. It was the same hum they felt when the thunder rolled across the skies, the same vibration that carried the Thunderbird's presence. It was a reminder that the stories were not just about the past, they were alive, woven into the present, carried forward into the future. And as the firelight flickered, casting the Thunderbird's shadow high against the walls, the people knew that its strength was still with them. They knew that, like the Thunderbird, they could face whatever storms lay ahead, their wings spread wide, their hearts unyielding. The wind picked up outside, rustling the trees, whispering of the next chapter yet to come. The battlefield was silent, the kind of silence that hangs heavy, pressing down on the hearts of those who stand upon it. Warriors lined the edges, their breath steady but their eyes alight with the fire of resolve. Above them, the sky churned, thick clouds rolling in waves of gray and black. Lightning sliced through the heavens, illuminating the faces of those who knew this day could be their last. And in the distance, a sound, a low, guttural rumble that vibrated through the earth, signaled the arrival of something greater than any one of them. The Thunderbird was coming. Legends whispered that in times of great peril, the Thunderbird would rise, its mighty wings breaking through the clouds, its cries igniting the courage of those who stood ready to fight. It was not just a guardian but a warrior, one whose presence could turn the tide of battle. Warriors painted its image onto their shields, carved its likeness into their weapons, and sang its name into the wind, calling for its strength to join their own. The stories told of a time when an army, outnumbered and weary, stood on the brink of defeat. Their enemies had encircled them, their banners darkened by the blood of those who had already fallen. The warriors looked to the sky, their hearts heavy with the weight of inevitability. But then, the wind shifted. It roared through the trees, carrying with it the scent of rain and the promise of something greater. From the clouds emerged the Thunderbird, its massive wings stretching across the sky, casting a shadow that swallowed the battlefield. Its eyes burned like molten gold, and its talons, sharper than the finest blades, glinted with the light of the storm. With a cry that split the heavens, it dove, its wings slicing through the air with the force of 1,000 storms. The warriors who had stood on the edge of despair felt the shift within themselves. The fear that had gripped their hearts fell away, replaced by a surge of courage so fierce it was almost blinding. They raised their weapons, their cries echoing the Thunderbirds, and charged into battle with a strength they hadn't known they possessed. Their enemies, too, felt the Thunderbird's presence, but to them, it was not a gift, it was a warning, a reminder that no darkness could stand against the power of the storm. The Thunderbird's role as a warrior wasn't confined to legend. Its image adorned the war regalia of many tribes, a symbol of courage that transcended the individual and became part of the collective spirit. Its feathers, said to carry the essence of the storm, were worn by those who had proven their bravery, a mark of honor that spoke of battles fought and survived. To carry the Thunderbird's feather was to carry its strength, to stand as a warrior not just in battle but in life itself. But the Thunderbird's power was not reckless. It was fierce, yes, but it was also just. The stories spoke of its cries, which could strike fear into the hearts of the wicked while lifting the spirits of those who fought for what was right. Its storms were not born of chaos but of purpose, a cleansing force that swept away darkness and made way for light. Warriors would speak of the moments before battle when they felt the Thunderbird's presence, even if it did not appear in the sky. The wind would shift, carrying with it a sense of clarity and resolve. Their hearts, which moments before had been weighed down by doubt, would lift, their beats steady and strong. It was said that in those moments, the Thunderbird was with them, its spirit guiding their hands, its courage flowing through their veins. The elder warriors would tell tales of how the Thunderbird had stood with them in their youth, how its cry had filled them with the strength to stand when their legs threatened to give out. They would trace the scars on their bodies, marks of battles won, and speak of how they had felt the Thunderbird's talons not as a wound but as a gift, a reminder that they had survived, that they had fought with the heart of the storm itself. The younger ones listened with wide eyes, their hands clenched around the weapons they had yet to use. They wanted to believe that they, too, would feel the Thunderbird's power, that they would rise as warriors when the time came. And when the elders handed them feathers, symbols of courage passed from one generation to the next, they felt the weight of the Thunderbird's legacy settle upon their shoulders. But courage is not just the absence of fear. It is the ability to stand in the face of it, to fight even when the odds are stacked against you. The Thunderbird reminded the people that true courage came not from the certainty of victory but from the willingness to fight for what mattered. It was a lesson taught in the stories, carried in the art, and lived in the hearts of those who called upon its strength. As the storm above grew fiercer, the warriors on the battlefield felt a change in the air. The enemy stood still, their faces turned to the sky, where lightning danced and thunder rolled like a drumbeat. The warriors felt the Thunderbird's presence, not as a distant legend, but as a force that filled their hearts, their lungs, their very beings. They raised their weapons, their cries merging with the storm, and charged, their steps steady, their spirits unbreakable. The Thunderbird had come. And with it, the warriors fought not just for survival but for something far greater, their people, their land, their legacy. The storm raged on, a symphony of courage and power, and the battlefield became a place where legends were born. Even as the storm quieted, as the clouds gave way to the light of a new day, the warriors knew the Thunderbird was still with them. Its strength, its courage, its unyielding spirit, it was not just in the sky. It was in them, in every step they took, in every battle they faced. The wind carried its whispers, and the earth hummed with its power, a reminder that the warrior's heart was never truly alone. The storm was theirs, and they were the storm. The wind howled through the jagged cliffs, carrying a strange, electric charge that seemed to buzz in the air. The sky was dark and heavy, its clouds swelling with a weight that felt almost alive. Then, a sudden flash of light pierced the gloom, and the earth trembled beneath a crack of thunder so fierce it could split the soul. In that moment, caught between the brilliance of the lightning and the bone-shaking rumble of the storm, you could feel it, destruction and renewal, locked in an eternal dance. The Thunderbird was not just a stormbringer, it was the storm itself, embodying the tension between chaos and creation. Its wings swept across the land, carrying both ruin and promise. Villages shook beneath its fury, but they also flourished in its wake, their rivers replenished, their crops bathed in life-giving rain. It was said the Thunderbird's storms could flatten entire forests, leaving only devastation in their path, yet from that devastation would spring new growth, greener and stronger than before. In the stories passed down through generations, the Thunderbird was both revered and feared. It was not a benevolent deity that coddled its people, nor was it a wrathful spirit bent on destruction. It was something far more profound, a force of balance, a reminder that all things, even the most devastating storms, carried within them the seeds of renewal. One tale spoke of a village caught in the grip of a drought so severe the earth cracked beneath their feet. Their crops withered, their animals grew weak, and hope dwindled with each passing day. The elders gathered, their faces etched with worry, and offered prayers to the Thunderbird, asking for its aid. Days turned to weeks with no answer, until one night, a distant rumble stirred the air. The villagers watched as the sky darkened, a mass of thunderclouds rolling in like an advancing army. Lightning split the heavens, and the first drops of rain fell, cool and clean against their parched skin. But the storm did not come gently. Winds howled, trees bent and splintered, and rivers swelled, their banks unable to contain the sudden torrent. The storm was ferocious, tearing through the village with an unrelenting fury. When it was over, the villagers emerged from their shelters to find their homes battered and their fields flooded. But as the days passed, the waters receded, leaving the soil richer and more fertile than it had been in years. Crops grew with a vigor they had never seen before, and the rivers ran clear and full. The Thunderbird had answered their prayers, not with mercy but with balance, reminding them that destruction and creation were two sides of the same coin. The people carried this lesson in their hearts, weaving it into their stories and their art. They painted the Thunderbird with wings that stretched across the sky, lightning crackling at their edges. Its eyes burned with a fierce intensity, a reflection of the storms it commanded. But there was always something else in those depictions, a sense of renewal, of life springing forth from the ashes. The Thunderbird was not just a destroyer, it was a creator, a force that swept away the old to make room for the new. Yet, not all saw the Thunderbird as a force of balance. Some feared it, seeing only the destruction it left in its wake. They whispered of its storms as punishments, its cries as warnings of doom. But even in their fear, they could not deny its power, nor could they ignore the life it brought after the storm had passed. For every tree it felled, 100 more would rise. For every river it swelled, 1,000 lives would drink. In the quiet moments after a storm, when the air was still heavy with the scent of rain and the world seemed to hold its breath, the people would sit and listen. They would hear the earth itself humming with new life, the grasses pushing through the soil, the rivers carving new paths. And in that hum, they would hear the Thunderbird, its presence lingering long after its wings had disappeared into the clouds. The balance it brought was not always easy to accept. There were times when the storms felt too great, their destruction too vast. But even in those moments, the people found strength in the stories of those who had come before, those who had faced the Thunderbird's fury and emerged stronger for it. They understood that the cycle of destruction and renewal was not a punishment but a necessity, a way to clear the old and make way for the new. And so, they honored the Thunderbird, not just as a stormbringer but as a keeper of balance. They carved its image into their totems, its wings stretched wide in both warning and promise. They sang songs of its storms, their voices rising with the wind, carrying their prayers into the sky. And when the first rumble of thunder echoed across the land, they did not cower in fear. Instead, they stood firm, knowing that within the storm lay the promise of renewal. As the stories of the Thunderbird passed from one generation to the next, they became more than just tales of a powerful being. They became a way to understand the world, a reminder that life itself was a balance of creation and destruction, of endings and beginnings. The people looked to the Thunderbird not for protection from the storm but for the strength to endure it, for the wisdom to see the renewal that followed. Even now, when the sky darkens and the air fills with the electric charge of an approaching storm, there are those who feel the Thunderbird's presence. They see its wings in the rolling clouds, its cries in the crash of thunder, and its power in the flash of lightning that lights up the night. And they remember the stories that speak not just of the Thunderbird's strength but of its purpose, its role as a force of balance in a world that is ever-changing, ever-renewing. The cycle continues, a dance of destruction and creation that has no end. And in that dance, the Thunderbird soars, its wings carrying the weight of the storm and the promise of what comes after. The thunder cracked across the sky, a sound so loud it seemed to shake the earth itself. The people below, huddled in their homes, knew what was coming. The Thunderbird was here. But it wasn't just a storm that approached. It was something far more powerful, something that held within it both the wrath of destruction and the gift of renewal. In the eyes of those who knew its story, the Thunderbird was not just a force of nature, it was a force of life itself, balancing creation and destruction in a dance as old as the earth. In the quiet moments before the storm, the people whispered stories. They spoke of a time long ago when the Thunderbird's wings had beaten the earth into submission. It was a time when the skies were dark and the winds howled like the voices of the ancients. The Thunderbird, in its fury, had swept across the land, breaking trees in half, turning rivers into torrents that flooded the villages, and sending the people scrambling for shelter. It was a time of fear, of terror that none could escape. But what the people did not understand, not fully, was that the storm was not a punishment, it was a clearing. The Thunderbird, in its wrath, was wiping the slate clean. The storm would pass, and in its wake, new growth would spring from the soil. The winds would carry away the old, leaving only the fertile ground for what was to come. It was the Thunderbird's way of making space for life, for creation. One of the most powerful stories passed down was of a village that had grown weak and sick, its people losing hope with each passing season. The crops had failed year after year, and the river that once provided sustenance had run dry. The people prayed to the Thunderbird, asking for its intervention. But they feared what that intervention would mean, for they had heard the tales of the storm's fury. Then, one night, as the people sat around their fires, they heard the first rumble of thunder in the distance. The sky turned black, and the winds began to whip through the trees. The storm was coming. The village trembled with fear, but the elders stood firm. They had known what this moment would bring. They gathered the people, asking them to stand tall, to endure the storm with courage. The Thunderbird's power descended like a tidal wave. The storm crashed over the village with such ferocity that the ground itself seemed to shake. But then, as quickly as it had come, the storm began to subside. The winds died down, and the sky began to clear. When the villagers emerged from their shelters, they found that the land had been transformed. The river had returned, its waters flowing more strongly than they had in decades. The crops, once withered and dry, were now lush and green. The storm had destroyed, yes, but it had also created. It had made the land fertile once more. Another story told of a great mountain that had stood for centuries, its peak towering above the land like a silent guardian. The people who lived near it revered the mountain, for they believed it was the home of the Thunderbird. But the mountain, in its immensity, had become stagnant. The people had grown complacent, and their lives had become slow, weighed down by the heaviness of their existence. The Thunderbird, watching from the skies, knew it was time to act. With a sudden crack of thunder, the storm descended. Lightning tore through the sky, and the winds howled with a violence that shook the mountain itself. The ground trembled, and the earth cracked open, sending rocks tumbling down the mountain's face. The people ran, seeking shelter, but they could not escape the power of the storm. For 3 days and 3 nights, the storm raged. The mountain shook, its surface cracked, and the earth trembled beneath the force of the Thunderbird's wings. But on the 4th day, the storm ceased as suddenly as it had come. The sky cleared, and the people emerged from their shelters. What they saw took their breath away. The mountain was still there, towering above them, but it had been reborn. The old, stagnant earth had been shattered, and in its place, a new landscape had emerged. Fresh water flowed from the newly formed crevices, and flowers bloomed where there had been only dust. The Thunderbird had destroyed, yes, but in its wake, it had brought forth new life, new possibilities. These stories, passed down from generation to generation, speak of the Thunderbird's dual nature, creator and destroyer. It is a force that cannot be understood in simple terms. It does not act out of malice, nor does it act out of pure benevolence. The Thunderbird's power is necessary, even essential. It clears the way for growth, breaking down the old to make space for the new. It is the embodiment of life itself, constantly shifting, constantly evolving, and sometimes painfully destructive. But the Thunderbird does not destroy for the sake of destruction. It destroys to renew, to cleanse, to create something greater than what came before. It is the fire that burns away the old forest, making way for the green shoots of new growth. It is the flood that sweeps through the land, leaving behind fertile soil for the next season's harvest. The people who lived under its shadow understood this duality, even if they did not fully grasp it. They knew that the Thunderbird, in its storms, was both a harbinger of chaos and a bringer of life. Without destruction, there could be no creation. Without death, there could be no rebirth. And so, they honored the Thunderbird, not as a simple god of storms, but as a symbol of balance. It was both a destroyer and a creator, its wings sweeping across the land to remind the people that nothing in life is permanent. All things must pass, whether in the storm's fury or in the quiet renewal that follows. The Thunderbird's dual nature was not something to be feared, but something to be respected. It was a force beyond understanding, a reminder that in every end, there is a beginning, and in every beginning, there is an end. The storm would always come. But after it passed, the world would be forever changed, more vibrant, more fertile, more alive. And in that way, the Thunderbird, in its power to both destroy and create, had given the world its most precious gift, the promise of renewal. The people stood in awe as the chief, cloaked in his ceremonial robes, stepped forward. The air was thick with the weight of generations, every heartbeat syncing with the rhythmic pulse of the land. The wind carried the faintest rumble of thunder. Some said it was the Thunderbird's wings in the distance, a reminder of the power that coursed through their world. In that moment, the chief, with his eyes locked on the storm clouds, was no longer just a man. He was something more. The Thunderbird had blessed him with its strength, its authority. And with that blessing came the sacred responsibility of leadership. In many tribes, the Thunderbird wasn't merely a myth, it was a symbol of power. Its wings were not just a force of nature, they were a representation of what true leadership should embody. Those who rose to positions of authority often found themselves invoking the Thunderbird in stories, ceremonies, and dreams. It was the Thunderbird that guided their way, reminding them that leadership was both a gift and a burden, a balance of creation and destruction, as fierce and unstoppable as the storm itself. The chiefs who had proven themselves worthy were those who had faced their own personal storms, trials of character and spirit. They had battled both external forces and their own fears. And in doing so, they had earned the right to stand among the people, as the Thunderbird stood in the heavens. They were the ones who could bring change, as the Thunderbird brought storms that swept across the earth, clearing the old to make space for the new. Among the Haida, the Thunderbird was often seen as the highest of all spiritual beings, above even the most powerful of animal spirits. The Thunderbird's spirit was woven into the very fabric of leadership, as it was believed that only the bravest and most respected could embody the power of such a being. When a chief was chosen, it was often seen as the Thunderbird who had guided them to that moment. And so, the position of leadership carried with it the responsibility of protecting the tribe and ensuring its prosperity, much as the Thunderbird would protect the land with its storms. But this was not a role that could be claimed lightly. There were those who were born with the markings of the Thunderbird, the ones who had the fire in their hearts, the courage to face the wildest of storms, and the wisdom to lead with compassion. They were the ones who had earned the Thunderbird's favor. Their wisdom and bravery were not just seen in their words, but in their actions. They were the ones who could call upon the forces of nature, like the Thunderbird itself, to bring about change when needed. They had the strength to move mountains and the foresight to guide their people through times of hardship, much like the Thunderbird could bring both destruction and life. But not all chiefs were the same. Not all could harness the power of the Thunderbird with such ease. In many stories, it was said that some leaders could not bear the weight of the storm's fury. They became too proud, too ambitious, forgetting that true leadership wasn't just about strength, it was about humility, too. Just as the Thunderbird could wipe away an entire village in its rage, so too could a leader destroy everything if they did not respect the power they held. The storm would pass, but the consequences would remain. There were tales of those who rose to power without understanding the responsibility that came with it. One such leader, in his arrogance, ordered the destruction of the very forest that had provided the tribe with food and shelter for generations. He thought that by cutting down the trees, he could build something greater, something grander. But as the trees fell, so too did his people's connection to the land. The Thunderbird, seeing this arrogance, sent a storm unlike any other. The winds howled with such fury that they tore through the village, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. The leader, once proud, was left with nothing. His people, devastated, turned away from him, and the lands he had ravaged lay in ruin. The story of this chief became a warning passed down through the generations. It was a reminder that power, like the Thunderbird's wings, must be respected. For the Thunderbird was not just a creator, it was also a destroyer. And those who wielded power without respect for its dual nature would feel the weight of its fury. In contrast, there were those chiefs who understood that true power came from balance. They understood that leadership was not about domination, but about serving the people, guiding them through storms both literal and metaphorical. When the people were hungry, it was the Thunderbird's power they called upon, not to bring destruction, but to bring the rain that would nourish the crops. When the cold winds blew, they invoked the Thunderbird's wings to shelter the people, to provide warmth and protection. And when a storm raged across the land, it was the Thunderbird's strength that they leaned on to keep them safe, knowing that the storm would pass, and the sun would shine once again. One such leader was a woman, known for her wisdom and strength. She was the daughter of a humble fisherman, but her heart was as mighty as the Thunderbird itself. She had witnessed the fury of the storms, had seen what happened when leaders ignored the balance of nature. She knew that power was not about the loudest voice, but about the quiet strength of the earth beneath her feet. She had spent years learning from the stories of the Thunderbird, understanding that true leadership required both the power to protect and the humility to serve. Her people trusted her, not because she was perfect, but because she embodied the essence of the Thunderbird, fierce, yet compassionate, strong, yet gentle. And in her leadership, she brought prosperity to the village. The fields grew lush with crops, and the rivers flowed clear and strong. Under her guidance, the people learned to respect the Thunderbird's power, knowing that they were not its masters but its stewards. Her leadership was a testament to the Thunderbird's role in shaping the highest ideals of leadership. She was a protector, a nurturer, and a warrior, just as the Thunderbird was. And as the sun set each evening, casting its golden light across the land, the people would look to the skies and whisper a prayer, thanking the Thunderbird for guiding their chief, and for guiding them through the storms of life. The wind howls, swirling through the tall pines, the world holding its breath. Beneath the heavy sky, the community gathers. Their eyes are drawn to the great wooden totem, its face carved with lines that speak of ancient wisdom, its body reaching high into the heavens. The Thunderbird, with its mighty wings and piercing gaze, watches over them. Its presence in the totem is undeniable, a powerful force, standing guard, reminding them of something far greater than themselves. Totems like this were not just carvings. They were living, breathing stories etched into the wood, a connection between the world of the living and the spirits. The Thunderbird, in its many forms, was often the central figure in these creations. It was a symbol of both strength and protection, a reminder of the power of the natural world and the forces beyond. Its wings, broad and sweeping, reached from one end of the pole to the other, stretching far and wide, as if they could cover the entire village beneath them. In the quiet moments, when the sun began to set, the community would gather around the totem. They didn't speak much, words often felt unnecessary in the face of such a powerful symbol. Instead, they looked up, feeling the weight of the Thunderbird's gaze. It was a reminder that they were part of something much larger than their own lives. The Thunderbird watched over them, guarding their lands, their homes, their families. The Thunderbird's representation didn't end with totems. It could be found in pottery, woven into the intricate patterns of baskets, pressed into the very fabric of the people's lives. The Thunderbird was a part of everything. On pottery, its wings were bold, painted with vibrant colors that seemed to come alive. The curved lines of the bird's feathers were no mere decoration, they were symbols of the storm, of creation and destruction intertwined. When the potter's hands shaped the clay, they would often whisper prayers to the Thunderbird, asking for its blessing. Each curve of the Thunderbird on their pottery was more than just a design, it was an offering, a gesture of respect and reverence for the power it represented. But it wasn't just the potters who sought the Thunderbird's favor. Weavers, too, understood the importance of this sacred symbol. Their textiles were not just pieces of art, they were woven prayers, threads of connection between the earth, the people, and the Thunderbird itself. The Thunderbird's wings appeared on blankets, on robes, woven with careful, deliberate patterns that spoke of the seasons, the storms, and the protection the Thunderbird brought. As the weaver's fingers danced across the loam, they would think of the bird's mighty wings, of the thunder that cracked through the sky and shook the earth. Each thread carried a piece of that power, a piece of the Thunderbird's essence, woven into the fabric, ready to be worn, wrapped around their shoulders like a shield. And then, there were the moments when the Thunderbird's image appeared in places one would least expect it, in the small, quiet corners of daily life. It was in the carved handles of tools, in the simple, worn-out sandals left outside the door. The Thunderbird was everywhere, not just in the grand, ceremonial pieces, but in the smallest, most humble aspects of the community's life. It was in the way they moved, the way they spoke, the way they connected with the earth beneath their feet. The Thunderbird wasn't just a symbol of power, it was a reminder that power came in all forms. It came in the strength of a mother's hands, the grace of a father's steps, the resilience of a community working together to survive another winter. But there were times when the Thunderbird's power wasn't just a symbol, it was a warning. The patterns on the pottery would grow more intricate, the lines sharper, the wings more intense. The storm was coming. And when that happened, the Thunderbird's image would appear not just on totems or pottery, but in the very fabric of the people's lives. The Thunderbird's image was a sign, a reminder that the storms were coming, not just from the sky, but from within. It was in those moments, when the sky darkened and the wind began to stir, that the community would turn to their art, to their stories, to their symbols, seeking comfort in the Thunderbird's watchful eyes. The totem, tall and proud, would stand at the heart of the village, its wings spread wide, its sharp beak pointing to the heavens. The Thunderbird's gaze would sweep over the people, watching, protecting. Its presence was a constant reminder that they were never alone. No matter what came, the Thunderbird was there, always there, watching over them with its mighty wings. The pottery, too, spoke of that power. The swirling, intricate designs on each pot weren't just art, they were the very breath of the storm, a connection to something larger, something beyond. When the winds howled, when the rains came, they would look at the pottery, at the Thunderbird's wings, and they would remember that even in the fiercest storms, there was renewal, there was life after the rain. The textiles were no different. They weren't just cloth. They were woven stories, prayers woven into every thread. Each blanket, each robe carried the Thunderbird's power, carried its strength. When the cold winds blew and the world seemed dark, the people would wrap themselves in these blankets, knowing that the Thunderbird was with them, protecting them. It was as though the Thunderbird itself had wrapped its wings around them, sheltering them from the storm. As the years passed, these symbols of the Thunderbird would grow more refined, more intricate. The people would carve them with love, with reverence, with the belief that the Thunderbird was not just a creature of the sky, it was a part of them, a part of their culture, their identity, their very soul. The Thunderbird was not just a figure in their art, it was the heartbeat of their people, the pulse that ran through their veins, the wind that carried them forward. And so, the Thunderbird remained, its image woven into every corner of their lives, from the grand totems to the humble pottery, from the blankets that kept them warm in the cold to the baskets they carried their food in. The Thunderbird was there, always, a constant reminder of the power of nature, of the strength within each person, and of the storms that shaped them. With each piece of art, with each symbol, they honored the Thunderbird, its power, its grace, and its enduring presence in their world. The crackling of the fire echoed through the darkening night, its warm glow casting shadows that danced like ghosts across the faces of the gathered crowd. The elder stood before them, her withered hands holding the attention of the children, the young ones who sat cross-legged around her, eager for the stories that would soon come to life. Her voice, steady and low, carried across the space, each word a thread that wove a tapestry of the past into the present. The Thunderbird, great and mighty, fierce and protective, was at the heart of the story. Long ago, she began, her voice rising and falling like the wind. There was a storm unlike any other. The thunder rolled and the sky split open as the Thunderbird flew across the heavens, his wings beating the air with the power of 1,000 storms. The earth shook beneath him, and all who heard the roar of his wings knew that something extraordinary was happening. The children leaned in closer, their wide eyes fixed on her, as though the very air around them was alive with the storm's fury. They could almost hear the Thunderbird's wings beating, feel the tremor in the ground beneath them. The elder's stories were like that, alive, breathing, pulsing with energy. In her words, the Thunderbird was not just a myth, he was real, powerful, present. For generations, the Thunderbird had been a central figure in the stories told by the people. It wasn't just a creature of legend, something distant and detached from their lives. The Thunderbird was a part of them, woven into their very being. The stories they shared around the fire, passed from one generation to the next, kept the Thunderbird alive. These tales were more than just stories, they were the lifeblood of their culture, the thread that connected their ancestors to their children, their past to their future. The elder paused, looking around at the faces of the children, their eyes still wide with wonder. She smiled, knowing that these stories would live on in them. And so, the Thunderbird gave his strength to those in need, protected the land from those who would harm it, and brought storms to cleanse the earth. His power, though fearsome, was always used with purpose, to restore balance, to remind us that nature itself must be respected, cherished, and protected. The fire flickered, casting a soft light across the children's faces as the elder's words filled the night. They could feel the storm brewing, the power of the Thunderbird in the air around them. And in that moment, it wasn't just a story, it was a part of them, a lesson that would shape their understanding of the world for years to come. These stories weren't just spoken, they were lived. The Thunderbird was there in the everyday, in the winds that howled through the trees, in the rain that nourished the earth, in the crack of thunder that startled the quiet of the night. The stories brought meaning to these everyday occurrences, turning them into something more, something sacred. The Thunderbird wasn't just a creature of myth, he was a constant presence, a force that shaped their lives in ways they could feel but might never fully understand. As the elder spoke, she wasn't just recounting a tale, she was passing on a tradition, a gift that had been passed down to her from her own elders, and that she, in turn, would pass on to the next generation. This was the heart of their culture, the stories, the myths, the legends. They didn't live on in books or written records, they lived on in the voices of the people, in the way the words were spoken, in the way they were remembered. And the Thunderbird was the centerpiece of it all. It wasn't just a figure to be admired or feared, it was a teacher, a guide, a protector. Through the stories, the people learned about their place in the world, about the balance of nature, about the importance of courage, strength, and respect for the earth. The Thunderbird was more than just a mythical creature, it was a living, breathing force that shaped their identity, that shaped who they were and who they would become. When the elder finished the story, she let the silence linger for a moment, allowing the words to settle in the hearts and minds of those gathered. The children, though quiet, felt the weight of the Thunderbird's power. They weren't just listening to a story, they were inheriting a piece of their culture, a piece of their history. And in that moment, they understood that the Thunderbird was not just a creature of the past, it was a part of their future. Years would pass, and these children would grow into adults, but the Thunderbird would remain with them. They would share the stories with their own children, just as the elder had shared them with them. The cycle of stories would continue, each generation adding its own voice to the legacy of the Thunderbird, each generation carrying the power of those stories forward. The Thunderbird's wings would never stop beating, the thunder would never stop rolling, and the stories would never stop being told. In every family, in every community, the Thunderbird lived on through these oral traditions. It wasn't enough to just tell the story once, it had to be told again and again, each time with new depth, new meaning, new life. Each telling brought the Thunderbird closer, made it more real, more present. The power of the Thunderbird wasn't just in the storms it created or the protection it offered, it was in the stories, in the way they brought the past into the present, in the way they connected generations, in the way they made the Thunderbird a living, breathing part of the people's world. The fire had long since burned down to embers, but the children remained seated, lost in the world of the Thunderbird. The elder rose to her feet, her bones creaking with age, but her spirit as strong as ever. The stories would continue, and the Thunderbird would continue to fly. The flames of the fire had died, but the stories of the Thunderbird would never fade. The legacy of the Thunderbird would live on, carried in the voices of those who dared to speak its name, those who dared to remember its power. And so, the stories would continue, from one generation to the next, each telling adding to the eternal rhythm of the Thunderbird's wings. The night was alive with stories. Around a fire, crackling and warm, the elder's voice rose above the soft whispers of the forest. The children sat, wide-eyed, listening as the elder spoke of the Thunderbird, its wings sweeping the sky, shaking the heavens with each mighty beat. The Thunderbird was a symbol of power, a force that could tear the world apart or bring it back to life. But as the flames flickered, a shift began to happen, one not immediately noticed, but always present. Over time, the stories of the Thunderbird would change. They would shift like the winds, evolving to meet the needs of each generation, as if the Thunderbird itself was learning to fly in new ways. As the elder spoke, she wasn't just telling the old stories. No, she was giving them new life. The Thunderbird was no longer just a creature that roamed the skies. Now, it was a force of change, a reminder that even the greatest of powers must evolve. Its mighty wings, once feared and revered, were now seen through a different lens, a symbol of both destruction and renewal, of the constant ebb and flow of the world around them. But this wasn't how it had always been. Once, the Thunderbird was a simple creature in the sky, a powerful being who controlled the weather. Its thunderous wings could stir the winds, sending storms and rain to nourish the land. It was a protector of the people, a fierce guardian that brought balance and order. When the sky darkened and the thunder rolled, the people knew that the Thunderbird was near, watching over them, ensuring that the world remained in harmony. However, as the years passed, the stories began to change. The Thunderbird wasn't just a figure in the sky anymore, it became something else entirely. It became a symbol of the challenges the people faced, the fears they confronted, and the struggles they had to overcome. As the world outside their villages changed, new tribes arrived, new ways of life crept in, the Thunderbird's role in the stories shifted. No longer was it merely the protector of the skies, it became a warrior, a force that fought for survival, that symbolized the courage to face the unknown. Some generations spoke of the Thunderbird with awe, others with reverence, and yet, some spoke of it with fear. The old stories, once shared with the certainty that the Thunderbird was an unwavering force, began to be reinterpreted. It became clear that, like the people, the Thunderbird had changed with time. It had grown, adapted, and taken on new meanings. It was no longer just a symbol of power, it was a reflection of the world it inhabited. And so, as the Thunderbird evolved, so too did the stories. As the people faced new challenges, wars, changing seasons, shifting landscapes, the Thunderbird's role in their lives changed too. The once mighty bird that flew above, watching over them with calm certainty, now had a deeper, more complex purpose. The storms it brought were no longer just destructive forces, they were signs of something greater, a cleansing of the old to make way for the new. The Thunderbird was now both a creator and destroyer. It was the fire that burned away the old, and the rain that nurtured the new. It was a symbol of the delicate balance between life and death, between destruction and creation. The stories themselves reflected this change. In one tale, the Thunderbird swooped down to save a village from an evil spirit, defeating it with a strike of lightning. In another, it was a figure of sorrow, whose wings brought the storm to wash away the sins of the people, purging the land of the corruption that had taken root. The thunder was no longer just a sound in the sky, it was a warning, a message that something had to change. The people began to see the Thunderbird as a reflection of their own struggles, their own need to adapt and grow. The Thunderbird's power was no longer just about strength, it was about survival, about understanding the ebb and flow of life, about accepting that change was inevitable. As the generations passed, the stories became more layered. The Thunderbird was not just one thing anymore, it was a combination of forces, of different aspects of nature. It was the wind that howled through the trees, the lightning that split the sky, the rain that nourished the earth. It was a reflection of the natural world, ever-changing and ever-present. The people began to see the Thunderbird as a force that couldn't be controlled, only respected. They understood that it wasn't just a protector, it was also a reminder that nature was unpredictable, wild, and free. In the more recent stories, the Thunderbird took on an even more complicated form. Some saw it as a figure of empowerment, an example of strength and courage that could inspire the people to face their own challenges. Others saw it as a more distant, mysterious force, one that operated outside the realm of human understanding. Its wings were still the same, its thunder still as deafening, but the way people saw it had shifted. It was no longer just a creature in the sky, it was a force that transcended time and space, a symbol of the ever-changing world they lived in. And so, the stories of the Thunderbird continued to evolve, adapting to the world around them, shifting in response to the needs of each generation. The elders who spoke of it now had a different understanding of its meaning, one that had been shaped by the struggles and triumphs of those who came before them. Each new storyteller added their own voice to the narrative, making the Thunderbird not just a symbol of the past, but a living, breathing part of the present. What remained constant through all of this, however, was the power of the Thunderbird. Whether it was seen as a protector, a warrior, or a force of nature, it was always a symbol of strength, of the wild forces that shaped the world around them. The stories had changed, but the Thunderbird had not. It had always been there, watching over them, guiding them through the storms, showing them the way forward. As the elder finished her story, the fire crackled one last time, casting a soft glow across the faces of the children. They sat in silence, absorbing the power of the Thunderbird, understanding that the stories were not just about the past, they were about their present, their future, and the forces that shaped the world they lived in. The Thunderbird would always be there, in the stories, in the thunder, in the winds. It was a force of nature that could never be tamed, never be fully understood. But as long as the stories were told, the Thunderbird would continue to live. The air was thick with anticipation as the drums began to echo through the village. The sound of their steady rhythm pulsed like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Each beat was a call to the spirits, a summons to the Thunderbird. The dancers stood in a circle, their feet bare against the cool earth, feeling the pulse of the drums beneath them. They were ready. Ready to honor the Thunderbird. Ready to invite its mighty presence into their midst. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, the night air came alive with the sound of chants, prayers, and the powerful movement of bodies in motion. The Thunderbird had always been there, in the songs and the dances. It was more than just a figure in the sky, it was a living, breathing force that inhabited every moment of the ceremony. The songs sung by the people were not just melodies, they were prayers, invocations to the Thunderbird, asking for its guidance and strength. The songs spoke of thunder, of lightning, of winds that howled across the land. They spoke of the sacredness of life and the balance of nature. There were stories wrapped in music, woven with the voices of the ancestors, echoing across generations. As the dancers moved, their bodies swayed with the rhythm, mimicking the mighty wings of the Thunderbird. Their arms spread wide, fingers outstretched, as if they, too, could feel the air shift with the power of the bird. The dance was a representation of the Thunderbird's flight, a flight that transcended the earth and soared through the heavens. Each movement was precise, deliberate, meant to honor the Thunderbird's strength and grace. The dancers' feet stomped the earth, not in anger, but in reverence, as if calling on the Thunderbird to descend from the sky and join them in their sacred circle. The sound of the drums grew louder, and with it, the intensity of the dancers' movements. The Thunderbird was near. The energy in the air seemed to crackle, charged with electricity, as if the storm was beginning to stir. The chants grew stronger, their words becoming more urgent, more powerful. The people were asking for the Thunderbird's blessing. They sang of the bird's power to heal, to bring life, to sweep away the darkness and make way for new beginnings. They sang of its role as both a protector and a harbinger of change, a reminder that life was a cycle of destruction and rebirth. And then, as if the Thunderbird had heard their call, the wind began to pick up. It swirled around the dancers, lifting their hair and cloaks, sending shivers down their spines. The earth beneath their feet seemed to tremble, as if the very ground was alive with the Thunderbird's energy. In that moment, the dancers were no longer just human, they were part of the Thunderbird, part of its storm. They became one with the wind, the thunder, the lightning. They were no longer just performing a ritual, they were living it. They were in communion with the Thunderbird itself. The songs rang out into the night, the voices of the people rising together in a single, unified prayer. The Thunderbird had always been a part of them. It was in their hearts, in their songs, in their dances. It was in their very breath, in the beat of the drums. The Thunderbird was not just a distant force in the sky, it was their companion, their ally, their protector. It was the one they turned to in times of need, the one they called on for strength, for guidance, for the courage to face the storms of life. As the night stretched on, the ceremony began to wind down. The thunderous drumming softened, the dancers slowed, and the chants faded into a gentle hum. The wind that had swept through the circle began to settle, the air returning to stillness. But the Thunderbird's presence remained. It lingered in the air, in the souls of the dancers, in the very fabric of the night. The ceremony may have ended, but the connection to the Thunderbird would never fade. It was a bond that could never be broken, a thread woven through time, through the stories, the songs, the dances. A bond that would continue to guide, to protect, and to empower for generations to come. The Thunderbird had always been there, in the songs, in the ceremonies, in the hearts of the people. It was a constant presence, a reminder of the power that lay in the forces of nature, and in the strength that lay within themselves. The songs and the dances were more than just rituals, they were a living testament to the Thunderbird's eternal power. They were a way of keeping the spirit of the Thunderbird alive, of ensuring that its presence would never be forgotten. As the fire slowly died down and the village settled into a peaceful quiet, the sound of the drums echoed in the distance, the faintest whisper of the Thunderbird's wings. It was a sound that would carry through the night, through the days to come, reminding the people that no matter how much time passed, the Thunderbird's presence would always be with them. It would always be in the songs, in the ceremonies, in the hearts of those who remembered. Always. The sky seemed to crack open, thunder rumbling from deep within the clouds. Above, the great wings of a bird, huge, unstoppable, a creature that belonged both to the heavens and to the storms, cut through the air. The Thunderbird, its massive form gliding with an effortless grace, was not the only one of its kind. Throughout the world, across lands far and wide, other cultures told stories of birds that soared beyond the limits of earthly beings, their feathers shimmering with a power beyond comprehension. They spoke of these birds with reverence, fear, and awe. To them, these mythological creatures were not simply animals, they were the embodiment of strength, rebirth, and transformation. In distant lands, beyond the horizon, there was the phoenix. A bird of flames and fire, its wings burning bright against the darkness. Its story was one of death and resurrection, a cycle that promised that from the ashes of the past, something new would always rise. Like the Thunderbird, the phoenix was not bound by the rules of nature. It defied time, bringing life from death, reminding all who heard its tale that in every ending, there was a chance for a new beginning. The flames of its wings were said to light the path for those lost in the dark, to guide them out of despair and into the light. The ancient stories of the Garuda, too, shared a striking resemblance. In the vast, sun-soaked skies of the east, this mighty bird was a symbol of power and divine authority. The Garuda was not just a creature, it was a warrior, a protector of gods and a force that could shatter the earth with the force of its wings. Like the Thunderbird, it was a creature of the storm, capable of shaking the heavens themselves. The Garuda's wings were the source of its strength, and with each powerful beat, it created a thunderous sound that echoed across the skies. While the Thunderbird's roar carried with the wind across the mountains, the phoenix's song rang through the silence of the desert, its flames licking at the heavens. The Garuda's wings thundered across the sky like a storm breaking, unrelenting, unstoppable. In each of these creatures, the earth and sky merged. They were both fierce and beautiful, capable of great destruction, but also the birth of something new, something more profound. Each mythological bird was a reminder of life's fragile balance, a cycle of creation and destruction, of death and rebirth that never ceased. Across these cultures, these birds were more than just legends. They were signs, omens, teachers. To those who followed their stories, the Thunderbird, the Phoenix, and the Garuda were reflections of the deep mysteries of existence. The Phoenix's flames spoke of the inevitable end that all must face, yet from that very end, something better, something stronger, could emerge. The Thunderbird's storm spoke of nature's fury, but also its grace, showing how destruction often makes way for new growth. The Garuda's wings, sweeping the skies, were a symbol of ultimate power, reminding all who witnessed its flight of the vastness of the universe and the smallness of human life. In every culture, these birds were held in the highest regard. They were embodiments of forces that could not be controlled, powers that transcended the human realm. Yet in that transcendence, there was an undeniable connection between the bird and those who believed in it. People saw in the Thunderbird, the Phoenix, and the Garuda a reflection of their own struggles, their own stories. When a community faced a great challenge, they would often look to the skies, seeking the blessing of these mythical creatures to guide them through. And though the birds remained elusive, their stories, told in whispers, and songs, and dances, reminded people that they were never alone in their battles. The parallels were clear. The Thunderbird's great wings were a visual echo of the Phoenix's fiery feathers, and the Garuda's thunderous flight mirrored the storm that followed the Thunderbird wherever it went. These birds were all connected by the same thread, a thread that spoke of the eternal cycle of life. It was a cycle that could not be understood by mere words, but could only be felt in the heart, in the very pulse of existence. As the Thunderbird's wings beat, so too did the wings of the Phoenix. As the Garuda soared with strength and purpose, so too did the Thunderbird, with its mighty wings creating a storm that shook the very earth beneath. These birds were not bound by the limitations of the earth, nor the rules of time. They existed in a space beyond comprehension, yet they were tied to the very fabric of humanity. They were the embodiment of the unseen forces that shape the world, the storm that blows in, the fire that consumes, the wind that sweeps the earth clean. And in their wake, they left behind stories. Stories of strength, stories of change, stories of the power that exists in both creation and destruction. These birds were never simply creatures, they were the manifestation of the natural forces that governed life itself. From the ashes of the Phoenix to the thunder of the Thunderbird, to the fierce wings of the Garuda, these birds reminded humanity that the world was ever-changing. But within that change, there was power, there was beauty, and there was the promise of a new beginning. As the winds howled and the flames roared in distant lands, as the skies trembled with the beat of wings that shook the heavens, the people of each culture looked to the skies in awe and wonder. And in that awe, they saw not just the birds of myth, but a reflection of their own lives, their hopes, their dreams, and their struggles. The Thunderbird, the Phoenix, and the Garuda were more than stories. They were the threads that connected humanity to the forces beyond, to the storms and the fires that shaped the world, and to the power of life's ever-turning cycle. The storm rolled in with the ferocity of a king's wrath. A bolt of lightning cracked through the sky, slicing the darkness. Thunder followed, so loud and deep it seemed to shake the very earth beneath your feet. In the heart of the storm, a shadow moved. Massive wings flapped, each beat sending a gust of wind that twisted the clouds into chaos. The Thunderbird, ancient and powerful, soared above the land, its presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. But the Thunderbird was not alone in the skies. Across oceans and continents, other cultures whispered of gods who ruled the heavens with the same power and grandeur. Celestial beings whose voices were like thunder and whose eyes burned with the fire of stars. These beings, like the Thunderbird, were not mere creatures of myth. They were symbols of divine strength and authority, forces that governed the world below, bending nature itself to their will. In Greek mythology, Zeus, the mighty king of the gods, sat atop Mount Olympus. His power was unmatched, his thunderbolts feared by all. With one flick of his wrist, he could send storms crashing down to the earth or summon calm skies. Like the Thunderbird, Zeus was not just a god, he was the embodiment of the very forces that shaped the world. His power over the sky mirrored the Thunderbird's dominance over the storms. Both were feared and revered, their names spoken in hushed tones by those who believed in their ability to bring both destruction and renewal. On the other side of the world, in the vast skies of Hindu mythology, there was Garuda, an immense bird with wings that spanned across the heavens. His presence was as commanding as that of the Thunderbird. Garuda, like the Thunderbird, was not merely a bird. He was a divine creature, one chosen to serve the gods. His flight was so powerful that it caused the heavens to tremble. In the same way the Thunderbird swept through the storm with ease, Garuda, with his mighty wings, cut through the clouds, his roar rivaling thunder itself. The connection between the Thunderbird and Garuda was undeniable, a shared essence of divine strength, a bond with the celestial realm that set them apart from all other beings. Then, there were the gods of the Norse myths. Thor, wielding his mighty hammer, Mjolnir, was the protector of both gods and humans. His weapon, which could summon thunder and lightning, mirrored the power of the Thunderbird's wings. Thor, like the Thunderbird, was often seen as a force of protection but also one of great wrath. He would strike down enemies and clear the skies of any who dared challenge the gods. With each swing of his hammer, thunder would roar across the heavens, and lightning would pierce the darkness. His divine rule over the storms echoed the Thunderbird's dominion over the sky. The sky gods across cultures, though unique in their form and identity, shared something deeper, a divine connection to the very forces of nature. Thunder, lightning, and storms were their domain. They were not just rulers of the heavens, but rulers of the earth as well. Where they walked, the earth trembled, and where they flew, the skies opened up in awe. These gods, much like the Thunderbird, were symbols of balance. They represented the dual nature of creation and destruction. Thunder could bring both devastation and renewal. Lightning could strike down the old to make way for the new. The Thunderbird's flight across the stormy skies was not just a demonstration of power, but a reminder of the cyclical nature of life itself. The heavens were not merely distant, they were active participants in the world below, shaping the lives of the people who looked up to them. As the Thunderbird soared high above the land, its wings beating against the clouds, it became clear that these celestial beings, whether Zeus, Thor, or Garuda, were not just figures of myth. They were the voices of the heavens, speaking to those who lived below. Their thunders carried messages, their lightning revealed truths, and their storms cleared the air, leaving behind a world that could be reborn. The connection between the Thunderbird and the sky gods was not only in their shared traits of strength and divine rule. It was also in their influence over the human soul. For centuries, people have looked to the skies in times of fear and hope, seeking the blessing of the Thunderbird and the gods above. In their flight, in their thunder, in their mighty roars, people heard the voice of the divine, a voice that both warned and promised, a voice that spoke of challenges and the strength to face them. In the heart of a storm, the Thunderbird's wings beat as fiercely as the gods themselves. The skies, now dark and violent, seemed to mirror the tumult of the human heart, unpredictable, chaotic, yet full of immense power. The Thunderbird and the gods above were more than just beings of myth. They were the embodiments of human strength and fear, of hope and destruction, of life's inevitable cycles. As the storm raged and the Thunderbird soared above, one could not help but feel that the divine was not something distant, but something close, something that could be felt in the very air. Like Zeus' thunderbolts, Garuda's wings, and Thor's hammer, the Thunderbird's storm was a call to the sky, a call to the earth, a call to the soul. And it was a call that no one, no matter how far below, could ignore. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the stars seemed close enough to touch. The wind barely stirred, and the world was wrapped in a gentle hush. But then, something shifted in the air, a slight disturbance that couldn't be ignored. In the distance, something dark moved across the sky, its wings vast and sweeping. A shadow that seemed to swallow the stars themselves. Thunder rumbled, distant at first, but growing closer with each passing second. And then, just as quickly as it came, it was gone, leaving only the lingering echo of wings and the quiet crash of thunder. The sight was brief, but for the ones who witnessed it, it left an imprint that could never be erased. Some would call it a fluke, a trick of the mind, or just the play of clouds. But for others, it was something deeper, something that connected them to an ancient legend that stretched far beyond their time. A glimpse of the Thunderbird. It said that when the Thunderbird appears, something great is about to happen. A sign of impending change, of balance being restored, of something that connects the heavens to the earth. The modern world may seem distant from the days of old, where the air was filled with stories of gods and great creatures, but the Thunderbird still whispers in the winds. Its presence is felt not only in the stories passed down by ancestors, but in the accounts of people who, against all reason, find themselves drawn to a mysterious phenomenon they can't explain. One such sighting happened on a stormy night along the Pacific Northwest coast. A group of campers huddled beneath their tents, the winds howling so loud it drowned out all sound except for the crackle of thunder. Suddenly, the wind shifted. The sound of something far larger than the storm rumbled through the trees, and a flash of light illuminated the night sky, as if the heavens themselves were alive. One of the campers, a young woman, stepped out into the storm, feeling an overwhelming sense of awe. There, soaring above the treetops, was a massive shape, its wings outstretched like sails in the storm. It glided effortlessly through the sky, its shadow passing over the earth with a grace that defied its size. And then, just as quickly, it vanished. The air grew still once more, leaving the campers in stunned silence, unsure of what they had just witnessed. The stories of Thunderbird sightings, like this one, are not just relics of a forgotten past. They are woven into the fabric of the present, where the old and the new collide. People still talk of strange encounters, of sightings that defy explanation, of moments when the world around them seemed to crack open and reveal something ancient, something powerful. Some say they've seen the Thunderbird's massive form in the skies, its wings stretching far beyond the horizon, and others speak of a powerful wind that seemed to follow them, whispering their name, urging them to look up. In every account, there is the unmistakable feeling of something greater, something beyond the ordinary, looking down on them from the clouds. It's not just those who live near the mountains or forests who experience this connection. In urban cities, where the noise of traffic and the hum of life drown out the sky, people still feel the pull. A man walking his dog late at night swears he saw something overhead, a shape that wasn't quite a bird but wasn't anything else he knew. He describes the feeling of awe that washed over him, the sudden silence that fell over the streets, and the chill that ran down his spine. He couldn't explain it, but he knew what he saw. It was the Thunderbird. These stories, often dismissed by skeptics, have a power that modern science can't explain. What causes people to describe the same feeling, the same sense of awe, in different parts of the world, sometimes decades apart? How can the same creature appear in the minds of different people, from different walks of life, and in such varying circumstances? The answer lies not in the logic of science, but in the pulse of something ancient and eternal. The Thunderbird is not just a myth. It is a symbol, a living reminder of something larger than any of us, and its presence is felt in those quiet moments when we stop and listen. A story from the Canadian wilderness tells of a lone fisherman on a foggy morning, casting his line into the still waters of a northern lake. As he fished, he felt the pressure of something watching him. The air grew still, then a sudden gust of wind ruffled the water. He looked up, and there, against the backdrop of low-hanging clouds, was the shape of the Thunderbird, soaring through the mist. Its wings spread wide, cutting through the fog like a knife through fabric. The man felt an overwhelming rush of energy, as though the creature was not just in the sky but in him, too. A connection, deep and inexplicable, wrapped around him like the storm itself. For those who experience these sightings, it's as though time bends, merging the ancient with the present. The Thunderbird, once only the stuff of legend, becomes something more. It is a bridge between the world as it was and the world as it is now. And in that brief, fleeting moment, those who have seen it know something. The world is far more mysterious than it appears. Even as cities grow and technology advances, the Thunderbird remains a symbol of the untamable, a force of nature that refuses to be forgotten. It is the living echo of a time when the earth was vast, and the skies were filled with more than just clouds. People continue to feel its presence, whether it's in the flash of lightning or the wind before a storm. It is the last breath of an old world, and in every story, every sighting, it reminds us that there is still magic in the skies, waiting to be seen. And so, the Thunderbird continues to soar, a timeless symbol of power and mystery, reminding us that even in a world dominated by reason and science, there are still things that cannot be explained, things that touch the soul and stir the heart. The stories may change, the people who tell them may shift, but the Thunderbird, in all its majesty, remains eternal. And in its wake, it leaves not just a rumble of thunder, but the hope that some part of the old world, the one filled with wonder and awe, will never truly fade. The sky above was heavy, clouds thick and swirling like a dark ocean. The air was thick with anticipation, and electricity that seemed to pulse with every gust of wind. And then, through the mist and storm, it appeared, just for a moment. A shadow so vast it darkened the very air, blocking out the sun. With wings spread wide, it moved like a force of nature, a creature both ancient and powerful. Its thunderous flight sent ripples through the world below, shaking the ground beneath the feet of those who dared to witness it. Some believed it was a trick of the mind, a figment of their imagination brought to life by the storm. Others swore by it, what they had seen, what they felt. For them, the Thunderbird was not just a legend, but a living entity, something tangible, something real. But the questions remained, was it truly a physical being, a creature whose wings spanned the skies? Or was it merely a symbol, a myth passed down through generations, its power growing in the telling? Cryptozoologists, the seekers of creatures hidden in the shadows of our world, have long been drawn to the Thunderbird. Its presence in folklore, its majestic wings, and its thunderous flight seem to offer the perfect recipe for a mystery waiting to be solved. Some believe that the Thunderbird is not just a myth, but a creature that once roamed the earth, its existence buried in the annals of time. They theorize that the Thunderbird may have been a giant bird, perhaps an undiscovered species, whose physical form was lost to history. Some cryptozoologists point to ancient reports of massive birds, creatures far larger than any known species, with wingspans so vast they could block out the sun. They claim that sightings of these birds, like the one reported in the Pacific Northwest or in the vast deserts of the American Southwest, are evidence of the Thunderbird's physical reality. These sightings often describe a bird with wings so wide they could cast shadows over entire valleys, a bird that moved with an ease and power that seemed beyond natural. Some believe that these creatures were once part of a forgotten world, their existence erased by the march of time, yet still lingering in the corners of our stories and myths. Then there are those who believe that the Thunderbird may be something more, something that cannot be contained within the boundaries of a simple animal. Could it be that the Thunderbird is not a bird at all, but something else, perhaps a manifestation of the earth itself, a being formed from the very forces of nature? Some cryptozoologists speculate that the Thunderbird might be a type of creature whose biology is unlike anything we know, a being that could be part physical, part spiritual, a creature who straddles the line between our world and the unknown. The stories of those who have seen the Thunderbird are haunting, vivid accounts of an encounter with something that should not be possible. One such story comes from a man in the Canadian wilderness who described seeing a creature so large that it seemed to take up the entire sky. He swears that the bird he saw was unlike anything he had ever known, its wings spread so wide that they seemed to eclipse the sun. He recalls hearing the thunderous flaps of its wings, a sound so deep it resonated in his chest. The bird appeared and then vanished in a blink, leaving only the faintest trace of its presence. Could it have been a remnant of a lost species, a bird too large for modern science to catalog? Or was it something else entirely, an apparition of the past, summoned by the storm? Scientists and skeptics, of course, dismiss these accounts. They claim that what people are seeing is simply misidentification, that it is nothing more than an overactive imagination or a natural phenomenon misinterpreted as something supernatural. But for those who have experienced these sightings, the evidence is undeniable. They are convinced that the Thunderbird is more than just a myth, and their encounters with it leave them with an unshakable feeling that the creature is real. Could the Thunderbird be hiding in plain sight, its existence brushed off by modern science, its presence seen only by those attuned to the old stories? There are theories that suggest the thunderbird could be a surviving species of prehistoric bird, one that is far too elusive to be caught on camera or studied by traditional means. Cryptozoologists have pointed to creatures like the Haast's eagle, a bird that once roamed New Zealand and had a wingspan that measured up to 12 feet. Could the thunderbird be a modern-day descendant of such creatures, hiding deep within the remote corners of the world, avoiding detection? But what if the thunderbird is something even more extraordinary? Some believe that it is a creature from the past, a bird whose very essence is tied to the forces of nature. Its thunderous wings could be a manifestation of the storms, its power the very force of creation and destruction. Perhaps the thunderbird is not just a bird, but a living, breathing symbol of the Earth's primal energy, something that cannot be fully understood by our limited perception. The search for the thunderbird is not just the search for a creature. It is a quest to understand the unknown, to tap into the ancient mysteries that still pulse beneath the surface of the world. It is a journey that goes beyond the realm of science and into the realm of belief, where the boundaries between myth and reality blur and where the impossible becomes possible. And in the stillness of a quiet night, when the winds are just right and the storm clouds gather, there are those who still watch the skies, hoping to catch a glimpse of the thunderbird. Perhaps one day, the truth will be revealed. Perhaps the creature will return, or perhaps it never truly left. But for now, it remains a mystery, a legend that stretches across time, waiting for the next chapter to be written. The thunderbird is not just a myth. It is a call to remember that there are still wonders in the world, things we can't explain, things that touch the soul and make us feel something deeper. The search for its existence is not just about finding a bird. It's about finding the magic that exists in the world, hidden in plain sight. And no matter how many theories are proposed or sightings recorded, the thunderbird will remain, as always, a part of the world's untold stories. There are nights when the air feels alive, when the winds carry a story on their breath, and the sky seems to crackle with the energy of an ancient presence. It is on these nights that people say the thunderbird stirs, watching from the heavens, its mighty wings creating the storms, and its eyes burning with a fire older than the earth itself. But it is not always a distant force, removed from the lives of humans. There are stories that tell of its closer, more intimate interactions, of blessings and wrath, of pacts and promises made, of lives forever changed in the blink of an eye. In the quiet of a village nestled beneath towering mountains, an elder once spoke of a time when the thunderbird walked among them, its wings folding into the earth, its massive form casting a shadow over their huts. This was not the thunderbird they heard about in stories, the one that commanded the thunder and brought the rain. No, this was something different. A creature that had come to give a gift, a blessing to those who were pure of heart, who lived with honor and respect for the world around them. It was said that a young woman, named Tashina, had been chosen by the thunderbird itself. Tashina was known for her kindness, her gentle touch with the sick, and her fierce protection of the land. Her spirit was untamed, and she carried the weight of her ancestors' wisdom in her heart. One stormy evening, as the winds howled and the earth trembled, Tashina ventured outside to tend to the crops that had been caught in the fury of the storm. The thunder rumbled like the growl of a beast, and the sky was an expanse of dark clouds. She was alone, or so she thought. As the storm reached its peak, she saw it, the thunderbird, its wings spread wide, a living shadow in the swirling chaos of the storm. It landed before her, its eyes burning like fire, its form so large that it seemed to dwarf the world around it. The ground beneath her feet trembled, but she did not flinch. There was no fear in her heart. She had always known that the thunderbird was not a force to be feared, but one to be respected. And then, without a word spoken, the thunderbird lowered its great head to her. The thunderous rumble of the storm seemed to fade into the background as it extended a single, powerful talon toward her, placing something small and delicate in her hands, a feather, black as night, but streaked with gold. This, the thunderbird told her, was a symbol of its blessing, a gift of power, a gift to guide her in times of great need. Tashina became a leader in her village, her wisdom and strength guiding her people through the harshest winters and the most devastating of droughts. The Thunderbird's blessing lived within her, and the storms would follow her, always protecting her, always watching. As she grew older, Tashina would sit on her porch and look up at the skies, knowing the Thunderbird was always near, its wings keeping her people safe. She was never alone. But the Thunderbird's blessings were not always so gentle. There were other stories, ones that told of its wrath, unleashed when the balance of nature was disrupted, when humans dared to defy the natural order. In one such tale, the Thunderbird's fury struck a village that had begun to cut down the forests that protected them. The trees, tall and ancient, had stood as sentinels for generations, their roots binding the earth and keeping the storms at bay. But the villagers, in their greed, began to chop them down, taking more than they needed, until the land itself began to wither. One night, the Thunderbird came to them, a massive figure in the sky, its wings blackening the moon. It swooped down, shaking the very earth with its powerful wings. The sky split open with a crack of lightning, and the wind howled like a beast on the hunt. In a flash, the Thunderbird's wrath descended upon the village. The crops were torn from the earth, the homes shattered by the fury of the storm. It was as if the Thunderbird was punishing them for their greed, teaching them a lesson they would never forget. The people of the village begged for forgiveness, their cries lost in the roar of the tempest. And in time, the storm subsided, the Thunderbird disappearing into the clouds as quickly as it had come. The village was left in ruins, but the people were changed. They rebuilt, and this time, they respected the land, honoring the balance that had been disturbed. They never forgot the lesson taught by the Thunderbird, a lesson that echoed through the generations. There were other stories of the Thunderbird, ones where its presence was not a force of destruction, but one of protection and guidance. In one such tale, a young warrior named Nico set out to avenge the death of his family. His heart was full of rage, and he sought the Thunderbird, hoping that the great creature would grant him the strength to defeat his enemies. As he ventured into the wild, he encountered a great storm, the sky darkening and the wind howling like a beast in pursuit. He called out to the Thunderbird, asking for its help. The Thunderbird appeared to him in a flash of lightning, its eyes like fire, and its wings beating the air with a sound that shook Nico to his core. But it did not offer the power he had sought. Instead, the Thunderbird spoke to him, its voice like the rumble of thunder. "You seek revenge, young warrior, but you do not understand the true power of the storm. It is not wrath that you need, but wisdom. It is not destruction that will bring peace, but understanding. Let go of your anger, and you will find the strength you seek." Nico, humbled by the Thunderbird's words, put away his weapons and returned to his village, choosing peace over violence. The Thunderbird had not given him the power to destroy, but the wisdom to live with honor and grace. These stories of the Thunderbird are more than just legends, they are reminders of the ancient bond between humans and nature, between the forces that shape the world and the lives of those who walk upon it. Whether blessing or wrath, alliance or lesson, the Thunderbird's presence in these stories is a testament to the deep connection between humanity and the forces that govern the earth. It is a force that cannot be controlled, but one that must be respected, a reminder that the natural world is both a gift and a power, a force that, when embraced, can change lives forever. The wind howls through the trees, a thunderous roar that echoes across the land. The sky is alive, crackling with power, as dark clouds swirl and gather in a restless dance above the earth. A single bolt of lightning tears through the storm, lighting up the heavens. And in the midst of the chaos, the people look up, their hearts heavy with awe and fear. There, in the distance, is the Thunderbird, its wings spread wide, its eyes burning with ancient fire, its body strong and resolute against the fury of the storm. To them, this is no mere bird. This is a god, a spirit, a protector of the people. And in that moment, the world feels small, and yet, infinite. Long before the arrival of European settlers, before the lands were changed forever by foreign hands, the Thunderbird was more than just a figure in the sky. It was a force that shaped the very lives of those who walked beneath its wings. For generations, the Thunderbird had been a guardian, a teacher, and a force of nature that ruled both the skies and the hearts of the people. It was a time when the land was still untouched, when the people lived in harmony with the earth, and the Thunderbird was a powerful presence in their lives. In the days before the arrival of strangers from across the sea, the Thunderbird's role was central to the spiritual and physical well-being of the people. It was said that its wings beat so powerfully that they could shake the very foundations of the earth. When it flew, the skies would darken and storms would rage, sweeping through the forests and fields, bringing rain to the crops, but also destruction to the unprepared. The Thunderbird was a creature of balance, embodying both the life-giving power of the storm and the wrath that could destroy. It was a reminder that the natural world was both a blessing and a danger, and that the people must live in harmony with it, respecting the forces they could not control. But the Thunderbird was not just a symbol of nature's fury. It was also a protector. There were stories of the Thunderbird swooping down to defend the people when danger came, when otherworldly forces or enemies threatened to tear apart the fabric of their world. In those times, when the sound of its wings echoed across the land, it was as if the very earth itself was standing with the people, offering its strength in their time of need. One such story told of a group of warriors who were preparing for battle. They knew their enemies were coming, and their hearts were heavy with fear. The night before the battle, as they sat around the fire, an elder told them of the Thunderbird's power, of the great bird who would come to those in need. The warriors, unsure of what to believe, did not question the elder's words. And so, as they marched into battle the next morning, they felt the storm roll in, dark clouds swirling above them. The sky cracked open with a deafening roar, and there, in the heart of the storm, they saw it, the Thunderbird, soaring high above them, its wings spread wide, casting a shadow over the battlefield. The warriors were filled with strength, their fear replaced by a deep, unshakable confidence. They fought with the fury of the storm, their enemies no match for the power that had been bestowed upon them. The Thunderbird had come, and with its presence, they were victorious. This was the Thunderbird's gift, to embolden the hearts of those who were pure of spirit, to bring courage and strength when all seemed lost. It was a bond that went beyond mere stories. It was a relationship that connected the people to the very forces of nature. The Thunderbird was not just a myth, it was real as the rain that fell from the sky, as real as the wind that blew through the trees. It was a presence that could be felt in the air, in the ground beneath their feet, in the rhythm of the storm. But the Thunderbird was not only a force for the warriors. It also played a role in the daily lives of the people, watching over their villages, guiding them through times of scarcity and abundance. When the Thunderbird was near, the people knew that the land was in balance, that the crops would grow, the animals would thrive, and the storms would be just and fair. They understood that the Thunderbird's power was not something to be feared, but something to be respected. It was a reminder that they were not alone in the world, that the natural world was alive, and that their connection to it was sacred. In times of drought, when the earth cracked beneath the sun's unrelenting heat, the people would turn their eyes to the sky, hoping for the Thunderbird's blessing. And when the rain would finally come, the storm that rolled in was not just a relief, it was a gift, a sign that the Thunderbird had heard their prayers, that it had answered their call. The skies would darken, the winds would rise, and the people would gather to celebrate, for they knew that the Thunderbird had watched over them once again. But with all its power, the Thunderbird was not all about destruction and protection. It was also a teacher, a spirit that spoke through the storms, guiding the people in ways they could not always understand. It was said that the Thunderbird's cries, echoing through the wind, carried messages from the ancestors, whispers of wisdom that could be heard only by those who listened with their hearts. Those who were wise enough to hear those whispers would find their path illuminated, their lives guided by the Thunderbird's presence. In the time before the strangers arrived, the Thunderbird was the sky itself, a symbol of power, of protection, of mystery, and of life. It was a figure woven into the very fabric of the people's lives, a connection to the natural world that could not be broken. And even as the world around them began to change, even as the land was altered by forces beyond their control, the Thunderbird remained a symbol of resilience, of the eternal bond between the people and the earth they had always called home. The thunder crackles across the sky, the roar of it shaking the earth beneath, as though the heavens themselves are weeping. A storm gathers in the distance, and the people, their ancestors' voices echoing in their hearts, look up. Once, the Thunderbird's wings spread wide across this very sky, commanding the wind, guiding the rain, protecting the sacred lands. It was not just a bird, but a spirit, a symbol of power, a keeper of wisdom, a guardian of their very existence. But that was before. Before the strangers came, bringing their fire and their iron, their words that bent the world to their will. Before they arrived with their boats and their strange language, the world had been simple, in balance. The Thunderbird, and all its majestic power, had been an unquestioned part of that world. But with the arrival of the new people, something shifted. The storm that once carried the Thunderbird's cry grew quiet, and the winds began to speak in a language the people did not understand. They whispered of something different, something foreign. The first time the Thunderbird's name was spoken by the strangers, it wasn't spoken with respect or awe. No, it was spoken as a legend, a mere tale from a people they considered inferior. In their eyes, the Thunderbird was nothing more than a figment of the imagination, a fantasy to be laughed at. To them, the skies were not ruled by spirits, but by men. They brought with them a different kind of power, one that sought to break the bonds between the people and the land, between the people and their stories. As the days turned into months, and months into years, the colonial presence grew stronger, and with it, the Thunderbird's place in the world began to change. The stories that had been passed down through generations were no longer seen as sacred truths. They became just that, stories. Myths to be dismissed, like old whispers in the wind, forgotten by a world that no longer had room for the old ways. The power of the Thunderbird, the deep, soulful connection the people had with it, was replaced with something colder, more logical. The spirit that once ruled the sky was now nothing more than a symbol of the past. But the damage wasn't just in the loss of reverence for the Thunderbird. It was in how the new power redefined the very nature of the stories. They began to strip away the depth, the spiritual significance, the sacredness. The Thunderbird became a curiosity, a thing to be observed, but not understood. Its power, its wrath, and its protection were no longer the driving forces of its story. Instead, the myth of the Thunderbird was twisted into something more palatable for those who had come to control the land. The fearsome protector, the god of thunder, became a shadow of its former self, a symbol of something primitive, something that the new order could easily disregard. In the hearts of the people, there was pain, a deep, aching pain that no amount of time could heal. They had seen the Thunderbird as a living, breathing force. But now, it was just a relic, a piece of history that no longer mattered in a world that had shifted in ways they couldn't fully comprehend. Their connection to the Thunderbird, once so strong, now felt distant, like a dream slipping away in the dawn light. But there were still those who held on to the old stories. The elders, those who had not forgotten the sacredness of the Thunderbird, still whispered its name in the dark of the night. They told the young ones, their voices trembling with emotion, of the bird that ruled the sky, that fought with the storms and brought balance to the world. But even in these stories, there was a sadness, a recognition that the Thunderbird was no longer what it once was, no longer the force it had been before the world had changed. And yet, the Thunderbird's presence lingered, even in the face of all that had been done to change its meaning. The stories, though altered, were still told. The storm, though tamed by the new world's logic, still raged on the horizon. And in the hearts of those who remembered, the Thunderbird was never truly gone. It was a part of them, a part of the land, and though the world had shifted, the Thunderbird's spirit could never be entirely erased. As the years passed and the wounds of colonization ran deep, the Thunderbird began to take on new forms. It was still the symbol of power, but now, it also became a symbol of resistance. In the faces of those who had been oppressed, in the voices of those who had been silenced, the Thunderbird's cry grew louder once more. It was not just the protector of the past, it was the rallying cry of a people who refused to be forgotten, whose stories refused to be erased. Even as the world changed, even as the winds carried the voices of those who sought to alter the very fabric of the land, the Thunderbird remained. It stood as a testament to the resilience of the people, to the enduring power of their stories. The colonial narratives may have tried to erase it, to strip it of its sacredness, but they could never take away the heart of the Thunderbird. Because no matter how much time passed, no matter how much the world changed, the Thunderbird was not just a story, it was a spirit, and spirits cannot be silenced, no matter how hard you try. Through every storm that rolled across the sky, through every whisper of wind that carried the cries of the past, the Thunderbird's presence was felt, in the stories, in the hearts, and in the storm itself. And as long as the winds continued to blow, the Thunderbird's wings would continue to beat. The storm gathers on the horizon, dark clouds swirling with a power that is both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The wind howls, the thunder cracks, and in the heart of that storm, there is a sound that rises above the rest, a sound of defiance, of strength, of a force that will never bow. It is the cry of the Thunderbird, echoing through the skies, a symbol of resistance against forces that seek to crush the spirit beneath their heel. For centuries, the Thunderbird has been a protector, a guardian, but as the years passed, it became something more. In the face of oppression, in the shadow of those who tried to erase the very essence of the people, the Thunderbird became a symbol of resilience. It was no longer just a creature of myth, but a living, breathing testament to survival. When the land was taken, when the people were pushed to the brink, when their voices were drowned in the roar of foreign influence, the Thunderbird's wings still beat strong. It became the very embodiment of resistance, a fierce reminder that no matter the storm, no matter the struggle, the people would endure. The colonizers thought they could break the spirit of the land, thought they could erase the stories, the songs, the sacred beliefs that had sustained generations. They saw the Thunderbird not as a divine protector, but as a relic, a myth that could be easily dismissed, forgotten like so many other pieces of the past. They brought their laws, their churches, their ideals, and they tried to force the people into submission. They burned the old ways, they buried the stories, but in the hearts of the people, the Thunderbird burned brighter than ever. It wasn't just a bird. It wasn't just a symbol of thunder and rain. The Thunderbird became a force of nature, just as unstoppable, just as powerful. For those who had been wronged, for those whose voices had been silenced, it became the cry of rebellion, the call to stand tall in the face of overwhelming odds. It was a bird of power, a bird that soared above the storm, a bird that would not be swayed. In the camps, in the darkness of the night, when the world seemed to press down on them with a weight too heavy to bear, the people would gather. They would speak in hushed voices, not just of the Thunderbird, but of what it meant. They spoke of strength, of endurance, of a will that could not be broken. And when the winds would pick up, when the sky would darken, they would look up, and in the roar of the storm, they would hear the Thunderbird's call. It was their cry too, one of defiance, of hope, of a promise that they would rise again, no matter how many times they were knocked down. Through the years of hardship, through the broken promises and the stolen land, the Thunderbird never faltered. It stood as a symbol, not just of the past, but of a future that could still be claimed. In a world where everything seemed to be slipping away, it reminded them of what they still had, of what could never be taken from them, their spirit, their strength, their history. The Thunderbird was not just a protector of the land, but a protector of their dignity, of their right to be who they were, to stand tall in the face of forces that would rather see them disappear. Even when they were forced to hide their traditions, when their voices were suppressed, the Thunderbird's wings still beat. It whispered in the wind, it cracked in the thunder, it flashed in the lightning. It spoke to those who would listen, those who still believed in the power of their stories, their ancestors, and the spirit of the land that refused to be taken. It was a symbol of unity, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was power in resistance. And in that power, there was hope. The Thunderbird became a beacon for the oppressed. As the world changed around them, it remained steadfast. In every storm, there was a reminder that no force, no matter how strong, could erase their spirit. The Thunderbird's cry rang out across the land, and it was a call to arms, a call to fight, a call to stand up and be counted. It was a reminder that they were not helpless, not broken, not forgotten. They were a people with the power of the storm in their blood, the force of the Thunderbird in their hearts. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, the Thunderbird stood tall. It soared above the clouds, above the fears, above the limitations that others had tried to place upon them. It was a bird of resistance, a bird of freedom. And in its wings, there was a promise that no matter what came, no matter how the world changed, the people would always have the power to rise again. The Thunderbird was their spirit, their strength, their symbol of defiance. And as the years passed, as the struggles continued, the Thunderbird's presence only grew stronger. The people began to see it not just as a symbol, but as a living force, a force that was with them in their fight, with them in their struggle. It was more than just a bird, it was a promise. A promise that they would never be defeated, that they would never be forgotten. Through every storm, every battle, every hardship, the Thunderbird remained. And when the skies grew dark and the winds howled, it was not just the sound of thunder. It was the sound of resilience, the sound of a people who refused to be silenced, the sound of a spirit that would never break. The Thunderbird was not just a bird, it was the heart of the people, and that heart would never be extinguished. The evening sky stretches like a canvas of fading fire, streaked with the last whispers of sunlight. Beneath it, on the edge of a mountain, a group of elders gather, their faces weathered but their eyes fierce with purpose. In their hands, they carry not just stories, but lifelines, stories that must be told, traditions that must be passed down, or they will be lost to time. The Thunderbird, soaring through their words, rises again. Its wings cut through the air, its thunder echoes in their hearts. This is not just a myth, it is a part of them, a part of their soul, and they will fight to keep it alive. For generations, the Thunderbird has been the heartbeat of their people. A symbol of strength, resilience, and power, it has been more than just a legend. It has been a guide through dark times, a protector when all seemed lost. And yet, as time marched on, the world around them changed. The stories began to fade, threatened by the unyielding forces of modernization, of a world that often did not understand the depth of these ancient teachings. The young ones, distracted by the chaos of the modern world, drifted away from the old ways. The thunderous call of the Thunderbird grew quieter. But the elders, standing tall against the tide of change, knew that they had a responsibility. They could not, would not, let their culture, their identity, slip into the abyss of forgotten things. The Thunderbird was not just a bird of the past, it was a living, breathing force that ran through their veins. And so, with unwavering resolve, they began to fight for its place in the future. It was not easy. The pressures of the world outside their communities bore down on them, often leaving them feeling isolated, like the last survivors of a fading world. But they knew the value of their heritage, the power of their stories, and they could not let it go. Slowly, they gathered the young ones, the children who still had the fire in their eyes, the ones who had not yet been swallowed whole by the distractions of the world. They taught them to listen, to hear the crack of thunder not just as noise, but as a message, a call from the ancestors. They showed them how to honor the Thunderbird, how to stand tall in its presence, how to call on its strength in times of need. The stories came to life once more around the fire. The ancient songs echoed into the night, their voices rising with the wind, as if calling the Thunderbird itself to witness their determination. The elders spoke of the storms, of the lightning that danced across the sky, of the thunder that shook the earth beneath their feet. The Thunderbird, they said, was not just a creature of the past, it was still here, still watching, still guiding. It was in the wind, in the rain, in the powerful crack of thunder. It was in them, in their blood, in their stories. But their efforts went beyond just telling the old stories. They recorded them. They wrote them down, preserving them in every form they could find, books, recordings, art. They shared them with the world, not as relics of a forgotten age, but as living truths that had survived against all odds. The Thunderbird was no longer something that could be dismissed as just a myth. It was a symbol, a living, breathing entity that had endured for thousands of years, and now it would live on. The young ones began to understand. They saw how deeply the Thunderbird was woven into the fabric of their lives. It wasn't just something they learned in stories, it was something they felt in their bones. It was in the rhythms of the drum, in the sway of the dance, in the songs that carried the wind through the trees. They understood that the Thunderbird was not just a symbol of the past, it was a force that could shape the future. But there were struggles, too. The outside world often looked at them with confusion, even disdain, as if their beliefs were outdated or irrelevant. The push to assimilate was constant, the pressure to abandon their traditions heavy. But the Thunderbird refused to let them falter. It whispered in their ears, telling them that they were not alone. Every time they felt like giving up, the sky would darken, and the thunder would roll in, reminding them that they were part of something greater than themselves. It was not just the elders who kept the Thunderbird alive, it was the entire community. The stories were passed from parent to child, elder to young one, in whispered conversations, in the quiet moments by the fire, in the teachings of the drum and the dance. Each person played a part in keeping the spirit of the Thunderbird alive. It was not just in the words they spoke, but in the way they lived, in the way they honored the land and the sky. They had to live as the Thunderbird would, bold, unyielding, and with an unwavering connection to their past, their ancestors, and their land. In the small corners of the world, the Thunderbird's wings continue to beat. The songs are still sung, the dances still performed, and the stories still told. And as the generations pass, they pass on more than just stories, they pass on a legacy of resilience, of strength, of the unshakable belief that no matter how hard the storm may rage, they will always rise again. The Thunderbird lives not just in the stories they tell, but in the hearts of those who carry them forward. With every passing year, the Thunderbird becomes more than just a myth, it becomes a living symbol of hope, of endurance, of the power of tradition. It is not confined to the past. It is present in every struggle, every triumph, every act of resistance. It is in the sky above and in the heart of every person who refuses to let their culture fade away. The Thunderbird is a force of nature, and its wings will never be silenced. As the wind picks up, as the sky darkens, and as the first roll of thunder echoes across the land, the people know that the Thunderbird is still with them. It is still a part of them. And as long as they breathe, they will carry its strength with them, passing it down, generation after generation, until the end of time. The Thunderbird will live on forever. The screen flickers to life, casting a soft glow across the darkened room. A low rumble of thunder fills the air, followed by a sharp crack that echoes through the silence. For a moment, the room feels charged with energy, as though something ancient, something mighty, is stirring. The camera shifts upward, and there, high above the clouds, a massive shadow appears, its wings spread wide, cutting through the sky with a force that seems to shake the earth itself. The Thunderbird, once confined to the realms of myth, has soared into the modern world. The power of its wings is no longer just a whisper carried on the wind, it is here, alive in the hearts of all who see it. It's hard not to be captivated by the sheer majesty of such a creature. As the screen fills with the thunderous roar of the bird's wings, a rush of emotions floods in, the sense of awe, of reverence, of something far beyond human understanding. The Thunderbird, now appearing in books, films, and media, has not only carried the weight of its ancient legacy but has also evolved into a symbol of something larger. It is no longer just a guardian of the sky, but a figure that connects past and present, myth and reality. In the world of literature, the Thunderbird has taken on new forms and meanings. It has appeared in stories that blend the old and new, tales where ancient beings find themselves in the modern world, struggling to maintain their relevance. The Thunderbird's arrival in these stories is always dramatic, a reminder that while the world may change, the powerful forces of nature remain constant. The thunder that precedes its arrival echoes through the pages, warning of its presence before it is even seen. In these books, the Thunderbird often symbolizes more than just a physical presence. It represents a force of nature, an unstoppable energy that cannot be tamed. The bird's mythology, rich with its symbolism of strength, protection, and divine power, finds itself translated into the hearts of those who read about it. The character of the Thunderbird resonates in unexpected places, stories of adventure, of the battle between good and evil, and of the ancient struggling to remain relevant in a world that has forgotten them. When the Thunderbird's wings beat in these stories, it's not just a reminder of the past, but a call to action, a symbol of resistance against the forces that threaten to erase the things that matter most. Films, too, have found a place for the Thunderbird. In these movies, it is no longer confined to the sky. It has descended to the earth, its power often playing a pivotal role in the plot. The visual representation of the Thunderbird is breathtaking, huge, majestic, and almost terrifying in its might. When it appears on the screen, the ground trembles. It is a creature that commands attention, and in doing so, it forces characters and viewers alike to confront something far larger than themselves. The Thunderbird in these films embodies a primal energy that cannot be ignored, a force of nature that is at once beautiful and destructive. Its appearance is a turning point in the story, whether as a guide, a protector, or a harbinger of change. But beyond the big screen, the Thunderbird has also become a symbol in pop culture, a representation of power and resilience. It appears in art, tattoos, clothing, and even as a logo, its image resonating with people who want to tap into its energy, its strength. The Thunderbird is no longer just a part of ancient folklore, it has become a modern icon, one that reflects not just the awe of the past, but the hopes and dreams of today. It has transcended its origins, becoming a reminder that some forces, some myths, never truly die. They are reborn, constantly shifting, adapting to new forms, but always carrying with them the weight of their history. In some ways, the Thunderbird in popular culture is not just a creature of myth, it is a mirror of the world around us. As society moves forward, faster than ever, there is a deep yearning for connection to the past, to something more grounded, more powerful than the distractions of modern life. The Thunderbird, in all its power, represents this desire. It is a symbol of resilience in the face of adversity, a force that will not be silenced by time or circumstance. And then there are the stories that go beyond entertainment, those that use the Thunderbird to make a statement about the world we live in. In these works, the Thunderbird takes on a deeper, more symbolic role. It is a guardian of the earth, a protector of the natural world, a reminder that the power of nature should never be underestimated. As climate change, environmental destruction, and the erosion of natural habitats become increasingly urgent issues, the Thunderbird stands as a reminder that nature will fight back, that the earth is not something to be taken for granted. Its thunder is the roar of a world in turmoil, calling for respect, for balance. With each appearance in popular culture, the Thunderbird grows more than just a mythic being, it becomes an anthem, a rallying cry. It carries with it the weight of ancient stories, but it also carries the dreams and hopes of those who believe in its power. The creatures of the past, like the Thunderbird, have found a way to evolve with the times, to live on in ways that transcend the limits of their original stories. They are part of something larger, something universal, an energy, a force, a voice that will never be silenced. As the world shifts, as technology advances, and as the stories of old are remade into new forms, the Thunderbird remains a symbol of enduring strength. It rises from the pages of books, the frames of films, and the murals on city walls, an emblem of what is eternal. Its thunder rolls through the hearts of those who hear its call, and its wings beat against the skies of modern life, never forgetting the power of the past, never ceasing to inspire those who still believe in its might. And just as its wings stretch wide across the sky, so too does its reach expand, touching the lives of people who never knew the legends. In every story, every film, every piece of art, the Thunderbird soars once again, its presence impossible to ignore. It is not just a creature of myth, it is a force, a power, a legacy that refuses to be forgotten. It is said that when the Thunderbird's wings beat, the heavens tremble. The sound of its thunder rumbles through the earth, a voice from the skies themselves. It's the kind of power that pulls you in, feeling the shift in the air, sensing the movement of something ancient and untamable. Imagine standing on the edge of a quiet forest at dawn, when the first rays of light pierce the trees, and then, there it is. A roar in the sky, echoing like a drumbeat, shaking you to your core. You look up, and your heart stops for a moment as you see it, the Thunderbird, not just a myth, but a presence, its wings sweeping across the heavens. You know then that something has shifted within you. You are no longer just a part of the earth, you are a part of something much larger. The Thunderbird has always been more than a myth. For many, it is a symbol of spiritual power, a divine force that connects the earthly to the celestial. As the world shifts and changes, this powerful figure has found its place again, not just in stories and legends, but in the practices of those who seek to reconnect with their spiritual roots. The Thunderbird has become a beacon in a time when the world feels disconnected, when people long for something greater, something more powerful than the distractions of everyday life. There are those who still hear the rumble of the Thunderbird's wings in their spirits. They are the ones who have heard the call and answered it, seeking to reconnect with the deep spiritual currents that flow beneath the surface of the modern world. For them, the Thunderbird is not just a distant memory of an ancient past, it is alive, a presence that guides and protects, that offers strength and clarity. In the quiet of the night, when the world is still, they feel it, a powerful surge of energy, as if the sky itself is speaking to them. It's a message of resilience, of protection, of the power that comes from standing firm in the face of adversity. They pray to the Thunderbird, asking for guidance, for strength to overcome the storms in their lives, and for the wisdom to navigate the chaos of the world. These spiritual practices are not just about worship, they are about connection. In a time when people often feel lost, disconnected from the world around them, there is something deeply grounding about calling upon the Thunderbird's power. Its energy is wild and free, a reminder that there is still something untamed within all of us, something that cannot be caged or controlled. The Thunderbird's thunder is a reminder that power is not always about control, it's about knowing when to stand firm and when to let go. It's about embracing the storm, not running from it. Some modern spiritual practices have turned to the Thunderbird as a symbol of resilience in the face of personal and collective struggles. When the world feels like it is crumbling, when it seems like there is no way forward, the Thunderbird reminds us that the storm can be survived. It's not about avoiding the struggle, it's about rising above it. And just as the Thunderbird soars above the chaos of the storm, so too can we find a way to rise above the challenges we face. The sky itself becomes a canvas for those who seek the Thunderbird's guidance, a space where the heavens and the earth meet, and where strength is drawn from the forces that lie beyond us. In some spiritual circles, the Thunderbird has taken on a role as a protector, guiding those who seek it with the same fierce loyalty and power it has always represented. There are stories of people who have felt its presence during moments of deep crisis, when they were lost, when they felt broken, when the weight of the world seemed too much to bear. And in those moments, the Thunderbird appeared, not in physical form, but as a surge of energy, a feeling that rushed through them like a storm. It was in those moments that people felt they were not alone, that the Thunderbird was watching over them, offering them strength when they had none left to give. There are those who believe that the Thunderbird's power is particularly strong during times of change, when the old world is falling away, and a new world is on the horizon. It is in these times that the Thunderbird's energy is most needed, to help guide us through the storm, to help us break free from the chains that hold us to the past, and to show us the way forward. The Thunderbird becomes a symbol of transformation, of renewal. It teaches us that even in the darkest of times, there is the potential for new beginnings. Just as the Thunderbird's wings beat through the storm, so too can we rise through our own struggles, emerging stronger and wiser than before. The spiritual revival of the Thunderbird is not just a return to the past, it is a recognition that ancient wisdom still has power today. People who turn to the Thunderbird in their spiritual practices understand that there is a deep well of knowledge that lies beneath the surface of modern life, a knowledge that can guide us if we are willing to listen. It's a connection to the earth, to the skies, and to the forces that govern them. It's a reminder that there is more to life than what we can see and touch, that there is a spiritual realm that is just as real, just as powerful, and just as important as the physical world we live in. In this way, the Thunderbird is not just a symbol of ancient power, it is a guide for the future. As we navigate a world that is constantly changing, it offers us a reminder of what is eternal, the strength to endure, the courage to face the storm, and the wisdom to understand that even in the darkest of times, there is the possibility for transformation. The Thunderbird's thunder is not just a sound, it is a call, a message from the past, reminding us that we are never truly alone. The sky is always watching over us, and with the Thunderbird's wings beneath us, we can rise above whatever challenges come our way. And so, the Thunderbird continues to soar, its wings beating with the rhythm of the world, its thunder echoing in the hearts of those who listen. It is not just a myth, it is a living force, a spiritual guide that calls out to those who are ready to hear its message. Its power is timeless, and in the stillness of the night, it whispers to those who seek its strength, reminding them that they are part of something far greater than themselves. The air is thick with the scent of rain, and the sky, heavy with the promise of a storm, presses down upon the earth. As you stand in the stillness, the world seems to hold its breath. The leaves rustle as if whispering secrets to one another, their edges trembling in anticipation. And then, in a sudden flash, a figure appears high above the trees. Its wings stretched across the sky, so wide, so powerful that they block out the sun. Thunder cracks, and the world shakes. It's not just a bird, it's the Thunderbird, a force of nature itself, embodying all the power of the earth and the skies. With every beat of its wings, it calls to the heart of the earth, reminding us of the delicate balance that holds the world together. The Thunderbird's presence in the sky is not just a display of power, it is a warning, a message from the earth itself. It carries with it the energy of the environment, the pulse of the natural world, and a call to protect what is most precious. The Thunderbird represents a connection between the earth and the heavens, between the forces of nature and the need for balance. It is a living embodiment of the delicate dance that keeps the world in harmony, a symbol that reminds us that we are not separate from the earth but intricately tied to it, woven into the fabric of the natural world. Every time the Thunderbird spreads its wings, it stirs the winds and calls the rains, bringing the water that nourishes the land. It is a symbol of ecological balance, a reminder that life depends on the careful relationship between the elements, the earth, the air, the water, and the fire. The Thunderbird's thunder shakes the earth, reminding us that our actions, both large and small, echo throughout the natural world. What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. The balance of nature is fragile, and when we disrupt it, we disrupt the delicate harmony that sustains all life. This is why the Thunderbird has become a symbol of environmental conservation. It stands as a protector of the earth, a guardian of the natural world, and a fierce reminder that the land, the skies, and the waters are sacred. When the Thunderbird flies, it is a call to action, to protect the forests, the oceans, the mountains, and the creatures that call them home. It reminds us that our connection to the earth is not just physical but spiritual. The health of the land reflects the health of our souls. To harm the earth is to harm ourselves. The Thunderbird's wings are not just wings, they are a reminder that we must spread our own wings, too. We must soar above the issues of our time, rising above the noise of the world and seeing things from a higher perspective. From up there, we can see how the earth is suffering, how pollution and greed have marred the beauty of the world, how the creatures of the land are disappearing, and how the balance is tipping. It is up to us to restore that balance. Just as the Thunderbird brings the rain to nourish the land, we must bring our efforts, our care, and our actions to heal the earth. The Thunderbird's thunder is not just the sound of its wings. It is a call to all of us to pay attention, to listen to the earth, to hear its cries. It reminds us that we are stewards of the land, that we have a responsibility to protect the resources that sustain us. The earth does not belong to us, we belong to the earth. The Thunderbird is a reflection of this truth, a symbol of the balance between human beings and nature, a reminder that we must live in harmony with the world around us. As the Thunderbird flies across the sky, its wings cutting through the air, it carries with it the weight of a message that must be heard. It speaks of the interconnectedness of all things, the forests, the rivers, the animals, the birds, and the people. Each is part of a larger whole, and when one part suffers, the entire system is affected. The Thunderbird reminds us that we are not isolated from the natural world. Our actions have consequences, and those consequences ripple through the environment, touching everything in their path. In the face of environmental degradation, the Thunderbird serves as a beacon of hope. It is a symbol of the power that nature holds and the strength we can find when we align ourselves with the natural world. It calls us to rise up, to stand with the earth, and to fight for the preservation of what is most sacred. The thunder it creates is a reminder that the earth is alive, and that its voice is one we must listen to if we are to survive. The Thunderbird's roar shakes the heavens, but it also shakes our hearts, reminding us of the urgency with which we must act. This powerful bird is not just a symbol of what was, but of what could be. When the Thunderbird flies, it shows us the potential for renewal, for rebirth. The earth can heal, but only if we are willing to listen to the messages the Thunderbird brings. The winds it stirs carry the wisdom of the ages, telling us that it is not too late to restore balance. It is a call for action, a challenge to confront the destruction we have caused and to work toward a future where harmony is restored. The Thunderbird's wings span across the sky, a constant reminder that we are all part of something larger, something more profound than ourselves. It reminds us that we are responsible for the earth, and that we must protect it as we would protect ourselves. The Thunderbird is not just a bird, it is a symbol of everything that is at stake: the forests, the animals, the waters, and the very air we breathe. Its power to shape the world is a testament to the strength of nature itself, and its message is clear: we must honor the earth, or risk losing everything. As the Thunderbird's thunder fades into the distance, it leaves behind a quiet echo in the hearts of those who listen. A call to action, a call to care for the earth, and a call to restore the balance that is so desperately needed. The Thunderbird is not just a reminder of the past, it is a guide for the future, a symbol of the strength we have when we stand together in defense of the earth. The message is simple, but it is profound: protect the earth, and it will protect us. The Thunderbird will soar again, its wings wide and strong, carrying the weight of the earth's future on its back. The wind carries whispers of change, voices stretching across oceans and mountains, reaching lands where the Thunderbird's story was once unknown. Its wings, vast and unyielding, have transcended the skies of its origin, casting shadows over cultures far and wide. Now, in the most unexpected places, its thunder resonates, not just as an echo of the past, but as a voice that bridges worlds. The Thunderbird, with its boundless power and profound symbolism, has become more than a protector of ancient lands. It has emerged as a global icon, a shared emblem of strength, resilience, and harmony. Somewhere in a bustling city half a world away, a child traces the lines of a Thunderbird tattoo on their parent's arm, their small fingers exploring the intricate design. What does it mean? They ask, their eyes wide with curiosity. The parent smiles, their gaze turning inward as they recount the story, not as a mere tale, but as something deeply felt, almost sacred. In their voice is the reverence of 1,000 stories shared across time, adapted, and cherished by those who have found their own meaning in the Thunderbird's image. In a gallery filled with modern art, a mural of the Thunderbird stretches across an entire wall, its vivid colors commanding attention. Its wings, painted in bold strokes, are adorned with symbols from multiple cultures, feathers interwoven with motifs of fire, water, and wind. The artist's intention is clear: the Thunderbird is no longer confined to a single tradition. It has become a universal language, speaking to the collective soul of humanity. People pause in front of the mural, their conversation soft and thoughtful. Each person sees something different, yet the awe in their expressions is the same. The Thunderbird's journey from legend to global icon hasn't been one of mere replication, it has been one of transformation. Across continents, its image has been woven into stories that address universal truths. In some lands, it becomes a guardian of justice, its thunder a warning to those who seek to exploit the vulnerable. In others, it takes on a softer role, a symbol of renewal and healing. Its adaptability is a testament to its power. No matter where its wings stretch, it retains its essence, an unyielding force that connects humanity to the forces of nature and the spirit within. Even in modern movements, the Thunderbird has found a place. Activists adopt its image as a banner of resistance, its thunderous roar an anthem for change. In protests for environmental protection, its wings spread wide on flags carried through crowded streets, a reminder of what's at stake. To those who march, the Thunderbird is not just a myth but a call to action, urging them to protect the earth with the same ferocity it embodies. Its presence is a silent promise that even in the darkest moments, there is strength in unity and purpose. In stories told under different stars, the Thunderbird is no longer just a harbinger of storms, it becomes a bridge between the seen and unseen, a guide through the unknown. In Asia, its wings might be likened to the great celestial dragons, guardians of wisdom and balance. In Africa, its thunderous power might echo the strength of ancestral spirits. Each adaptation breathes new life into the Thunderbird, allowing it to grow, to shift, to find its place in the hearts of those who need its message most. The modern world, with all its technology and progress, has not diminished the Thunderbird's impact. If anything, it has amplified it. In digital spaces, its image appears in games, films, and books, captivating audiences who may never have heard its original stories. Yet, even here, the Thunderbird remains a symbol of something timeless. In the hands of creators, its legend takes on futuristic forms, soaring through galaxies and shaping narratives of hope and survival. Still, its heart remains the same, a protector, a challenger, a force that demands respect and awe. There is something deeply human about the way the Thunderbird has been adopted across cultures. It speaks to our shared longing for connection, for something larger than ourselves that can weather the storms of life. In its wings, people see the strength to endure. In its thunder, they hear the courage to speak out. The Thunderbird's journey from a sacred legend of the Americas to a global icon is a reflection of our collective need to hold on to symbols that inspire us to rise above our limitations. And yet, as its symbolism spreads, there are those who worry about what is lost in translation. The Thunderbird's roots in native traditions are deep and sacred, and the stories that birthed it carry meanings that cannot be easily replicated. For some, its global adoption is a bittersweet transformation, a testament to its power but also a reminder of the need to honor its origins. The Thunderbird story may soar across the world, but its heart beats strongest in the lands where its thunder first roared, and the voices of those who have carried its legend through generations. The sound of thunder rolls across the sky, distant but unmistakable. It is the same sound heard in every corner of the world, yet it holds a different meaning for each who listens. To some, it is a call to remember where the story began, to honor the traditions that gave life to the Thunderbird. To others, it is a call to adapt, to find new ways to connect with its power and message. The Thunderbird, ever adaptable, seems to welcome both interpretations, its wings spanning both past and future, bridging divides and connecting hearts. The air trembles with a force unseen yet deeply felt. It's not just a storm brewing, it's a presence, an essence that has endured beyond time and borders. The Thunderbird, its name whispered in reverence, its image etched into the hearts of many. This is not a relic of a forgotten past, it is alive, surging through the veins of those who seek meaning in chaos and strength in the face of adversity. Why does it matter, this ancient being with wings of thunder and eyes that pierce the horizon? Because it is a mirror, reflecting who we are and who we could be. A child sits by a fire, the night wrapping around them like a protective cloak. The elder's voice carries a story of the Thunderbird, of its power to summon rain when the land was parched, of its fierce protection over those who respected the balance of life. The child listens, their heart pounding not from fear but from awe. They feel the weight of the story settling into their bones, a promise that the Thunderbird isn't just a tale, it's a guide, a protector, and a reminder of the forces that shape the world. In the silence after the tale, the child looks up at the elder. Is it real? They ask, their voice soft, almost hesitant. The elder smiles, their eyes glinting like embers. Real, they echo. The Thunderbird is as real as the wind that shakes the trees, as real as the fire that warms our hands. It's not just out there, child. It's in here. They place a hand over their heart, and the child nods, understanding more than words could ever explain. For generations, the Thunderbird has mattered because it is more than a story, it is a symbol of hope, a force that reminds us to look up even when the weight of the world pulls us down. Its thunderous presence calls out to the parts of us that yearn to be strong, resilient, and unyielding. In the chaos of storms, it is the calm center, reminding us that even in destruction, there is renewal. In a world fractured by division and strife, the Thunderbird's relevance is even more profound. It is a bridge, connecting people across cultures, times, and experiences. Its wings carry the stories of those who refuse to be silenced, its roar echoing the cries of those who stand against injustice. For the dispossessed, the oppressed, and the overlooked, the Thunderbird is a reminder that power can be wielded with wisdom, that strength is not in domination but in protection. A young activist stands before a crowd, their voice steady and clear. Behind them, a banner bears the image of the Thunderbird, its wings spread wide as if shielding the people below. This is not just a fight for us, the activist says, their eyes blazing with conviction. This is a fight for the land, for the air, for the water. This is a fight for balance, just as the Thunderbird has always taught us. The crowd roars in agreement, their voices rising like a storm, their spirits emboldened by the symbol that unites them. The Thunderbird matters because it refuses to be forgotten. In the digital age, where myths can be reduced to entertainment, it remains steadfast, a symbol that transcends its origins while honoring them. It appears in art, in stories, in movements for change. Each depiction carries a piece of its essence, a spark that ignites something ancient and enduring in those who encounter it. Its enduring legacy is not just in its stories, but in its lessons. It teaches that power must be tempered with responsibility, that every action has a consequence, and that respect for the natural world is not optional but essential. In the face of climate crises and environmental degradation, the Thunderbird's roar is a warning we cannot afford to ignore. Its storms are not just destructive, they are cleansing, a call to restore the balance we have disrupted. And yet, the Thunderbird is not just a force of nature, it is a force within us. It calls to the dreamers, the warriors, the protectors. It reminds us that we are not powerless, that even in the darkest times, we have the strength to rise, to spread our wings, and to face the storm. It is this duality, both fierce and nurturing, both protector and challenger, that makes it timeless. A group of elders gathers in a circle, their hands clasped as they sing an old song to honor the Thunderbird. The melody is simple but powerful, resonating with the rhythms of the earth. As their voices rise, so does a sense of connection, not just to each other, but to something greater. The Thunderbird isn't just a story, it's a presence, a reminder that the world is alive, pulsing with energy and meaning. In a classroom, a teacher shows a painting of the Thunderbird to their students. "What do you see?" they ask, their voice gentle. The students study the image, their faces thoughtful. One child raises their hand. "It looks strong, but not scary," they say. Another adds, "It's like it's watching over everything, making sure it's okay." The teacher smiles, their heart full. The Thunderbird still speaks, even to those who are hearing its story for the first time. The winds pick up, and the clouds gather. The storm is coming, but it is not a storm of fear, it is one of renewal, of change. The Thunderbird's wings beat against the sky, each stroke a reminder that it is still here, still relevant, still powerful. And as its roar shakes the heavens, it leaves no doubt, its legacy is not just in the past, but in the hearts of all who carry its story forward. The sound of thunder rolls across the horizon, a low, powerful rumble that seems to resonate from the very core of the earth. For a moment, the world stands still, as if holding its breath. In that pause, there's a sense of something ancient stirring, a force that has watched the world change countless times yet remains steadfast, unyielding. The Thunderbird, the eternal guardian of balance and strength, feels as relevant now as it did when its stories were first told around the flickering flames of campfires. A young artist stands before a blank canvas, their hands trembling with anticipation. They are not just painting an image, they are breathing life into a story that feels older than time itself. The Thunderbird's form begins to emerge, its wings stretched wide, its eyes fierce and knowing. As each stroke of the brush connects the past to the present, the artist feels a quiet revelation. This is not just a story of another time, it is a guide for the now. In a world teetering on the edge of chaos, where voices often go unheard and the balance of nature hangs by a thread, the Thunderbird's lessons shine brighter than ever. It teaches that power must be used with care, that strength comes not from destruction but from the ability to protect and restore. These are not abstract concepts, they are calls to action, etched into the fabric of a myth that refuses to fade. A storm gathers, and the skies darken. For a farmer watching the clouds roll in, it's a reminder of the fragile balance that sustains life. The rain is both a gift and a warning, much like the Thunderbird storms of old. The farmer closes their eyes, whispering a silent prayer, not out of fear but out of respect. In that moment, they feel a connection to their ancestors, who looked to the Thunderbird for guidance in times of uncertainty. The modern world, with all its advancements, often forgets the wisdom of those who came before. But the Thunderbird's lessons remain, urging humanity to look beyond itself, to see the interconnected web of life. It's in the whisper of the wind, the crash of waves, the delicate hum of bees, reminders that we are not separate from nature but a part of it. And when we disrupt that balance, we invite the storm. A child reads an old storybook, the pages worn and the illustrations vibrant. Their fingers trace the outline of the Thunderbird, and they ask their parent, "Why does it have lightning in its claws?" The parent smiles, their voice filled with reverence. Because it reminds us that with great power comes responsibility. The lightning is not just for show, it's for balance, for protection. The child nods, their young mind already grasping a truth that many adults have forgotten. The lessons of the Thunderbird are not confined to nature alone. They ripple into the human heart, challenging us to confront the storms within. It teaches that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to rise above it, that resilience is born not from avoiding hardship, but from facing it head-on. These truths are timeless, as vital now as they were when the first stories of the Thunderbird were shared. In the hustle of urban life, where skyscrapers replace mountains and neon lights outshine stars, the Thunderbird's roar still echoes. It calls to those who feel the weight of disconnection, reminding them that even in the concrete jungle, the spirit of the wild lives on. Its wings span generations, its stories weaving a thread that ties the past to the present, urging us to listen, to remember, to act. A teacher stands before their class, holding up a carved image of the Thunderbird. "This is not just a symbol," they say. "It's a promise, a reminder that we are caretakers of this earth and of each other." The students watch, captivated, as the teacher speaks of balance, of respect, of the strength found in unity. And as the bell rings, signaling the end of the lesson, the message lingers, settling into the hearts of those who will carry it forward. The winds shift, and the storm passes, leaving the air crisp and alive. For those who have listened, the Thunderbird's lessons are clear. Balance is not a destination but a practice, a commitment to living in harmony with the world and with ourselves. It's a lesson that transcends time, reminding us that while the world may change, the need for respect, resilience, and connection remains eternal. The sky split open with a crack of lightning, and for an instant, the world seemed to hold its breath. In that brief, electric moment, it was as if the boundaries between earth and sky dissolved. The Thunderbird's cry, carried on the wind, felt like a message from another world, one that had always been near, just beyond the veil of human perception. It wasn't just a sound, it was a connection, a bridge that reminded those who heard it that they were part of something far greater than themselves. A lone figure stood on a mountaintop, arms outstretched as the rain began to fall. They weren't seeking shelter, they were seeking communion. Each drop felt like a blessing, a reminder of the life-giving bond between humans and the earth. The Thunderbird, they believed, was there, soaring unseen above the clouds, stitching together the realms of nature, humanity, and the divine. It wasn't a myth to them, it was a truth as real as the storm that surrounded them. In the quiet of a forest, the hum of the world came alive. Leaves rustled like whispers, streams babbled in melodic rhythm, and the occasional cry of a bird pierced the air. To the careful listener, it was more than just noise, it was a language, a symphony of existence. The Thunderbird was said to oversee this harmony, its presence ensuring that each note played its part. It wasn't merely a guardian of balance, it was the conductor of life's interconnected song. A shaman knelt by a fire, the flames casting flickering shadows that seemed to dance with the spirits of the ancestors. They sang an old song, their voice trembling with the weight of centuries. Each word was a thread, weaving a tapestry that tied the past to the present, the seen to the unseen. In their heart, they knew the Thunderbird listened. It was not just a creature of storms, it was a messenger, carrying prayers to the heavens and bringing answers back to the earth. For the farmers who watched the skies, for the children who listened to the stories, for the seekers who yearned for understanding, the Thunderbird was more than a symbol. It was a reminder of the bridges that existed between worlds, bridges that could not be seen but could always be felt. It taught that humanity's place was not above nature or below it, but within it, as one thread in an endless, intricate web. A village elder stood before a group of wide-eyed children, their voice steady and full of wonder. The Thunderbird, they said, is the heartbeat of the world. When it flies, it carries our hopes and fears, our joys and sorrows. It reminds us that we are never alone, that the earth, the sky, and the spirit world are always connected. The children listened, their small hands clutching one another as they imagined the mighty wings that spanned those distances. In times of crisis, the Thunderbird stories became more than tales, they became lifelines. When the land was parched, when the rivers ran dry, people turned to the skies, calling out for the Thunderbird to bring the rain. And when the rains came, they weren't seen as mere weather but as answers to prayers, proof that the connection between humans and the divine was alive and unbroken. A traveler, weary from their journey, found themselves standing at the edge of a vast canyon. The wind howled, carrying with it the echoes of ages long past. As they gazed into the endless expanse, they felt a presence, a quiet, powerful assurance that they were part of something infinite. They closed their eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the Thunderbird's wings brush against their spirit, reminding them that even in the vastness, they were never truly alone. In the modern world, where the hum of technology often drowns out the hum of the earth, the Thunderbird's message remains. It whispers to those who will listen, urging them to remember the connections that sustain life. It's there in the eyes of a child planting their first tree, in the hands of a healer tending to the wounded, in the hearts of those who still look to the skies with wonder. The Thunderbird is not confined by time or place. It exists wherever there is a need for balance, for connection, for hope. It soars between worlds, carrying messages that transcend language and culture, reminding all who hear its cry that they are part of something sacred, something eternal. The fire burned low, casting its amber glow on the circle of faces gathered around it. Among them, an elder's voice rose, clear and resonant, weaving the tale of the Thunderbird once again. The story was alive, not merely spoken but felt, as though the great wings of the Thunderbird hovered just above, stirring the air and hearts alike. Each listener, young and old, was drawn into the rhythm of the narrative, their imagination soaring alongside the mighty creature that had transcended time. The elder paused, their gaze sweeping across the circle. "What will you do with this story?" they asked, their voice both gentle and firm. The question lingered, heavy with unspoken possibilities. It wasn't rhetorical, it was a call, a challenge to ensure that the Thunderbird's legacy would not fade into the shadows of modernity. For if the Thunderbird's cry was silenced, what else might be lost with it? In a quiet classroom thousands of miles away, a teacher stood before a group of children, sharing the same tale. On the walls were drawings, bright, colorful depictions of the Thunderbird soaring amidst storms, a beacon of power and grace. One child raised their hand. "Does the Thunderbird still fly?" they asked, their voice small but filled with hope. The teacher smiled, answering not with words, but by opening a window and letting the wind rush in. It was a silent reminder that the Thunderbird's spirit lives wherever the earth, sky, and human heart meet. The Thunderbird is not confined to the past. Its wings are spread wide, touching every corner of the world where its story has been told and retold, adapted yet never diminished. It's there in the songs sung by indigenous musicians blending traditional rhythms with modern beats, creating anthems of resilience and pride. It's there in the art, where bold strokes of lightning meet digital canvases, bridging ancient wisdom with contemporary expression. And it's there in the minds of those who dream, who wonder what the Thunderbird means for a future world both fractured and interconnected. The challenge is not merely to preserve the Thunderbird, but to let it evolve, to let its story grow alongside humanity's ever-changing reality. Will the Thunderbird find its place in the languages of coding and artificial intelligence? Will it inspire new generations of scientists, artists, and leaders to protect the delicate balance it has always symbolized? Its wings, after all, are vast enough to carry both tradition and innovation. There are those who believe the Thunderbird's future lies not just in storytelling but in action. They see its cry echoed in the roar of protests against environmental destruction, in the movements to reclaim ancestral lands, and in the quiet, persistent work of rebuilding communities that have been fractured. The Thunderbird is a rallying call, a reminder that strength lies in unity and that even the fiercest storms can bring renewal. In a world increasingly driven by technology, some worry that stories like the Thunderbird's may fade into obscurity. But the Thunderbird has weathered countless storms. It has always found ways to adapt. It is there in virtual reality experiences that immerse users in the story's power, and films and literature that reimagine its mythology for new audiences, and classrooms where students learn not just the tale but its deeper meanings. One can almost hear the Thunderbird's voice rising over the cacophony of the modern world, urging humanity to remember the connections that bind us. Its story is not merely a relic, it's a living force, a guide for navigating the challenges and opportunities of the present and the unknown landscapes of the future. Under a starlit sky, a group of young storytellers sat together, weaving new tales inspired by the Thunderbird. Their voices carried the same reverence, the same awe, but also something new, hope for what the Thunderbird could mean in a world that desperately needed its wisdom. It wasn't just a myth to them, it was a promise that no matter how dark the storm, there would always be light, always be renewal. The fire continued to burn, casting flickering shadows that seemed to take the shape of wings. The elders spoke again, their words slow, deliberate. The Thunderbird will fly as long as we believe in it, as long as we let it teach us. Its wings are ours, its strength is ours. And as long as there is a sky, the Thunderbird will never truly leave us. And so, the story of the Thunderbird loops forward, not ending but beginning anew in each heart it touches. The wind howled through the valley, carrying a song only it knew. Somewhere high above, thunder rumbled, not the kind summoned by storms, but the kind that spoke to something ancient and unbroken. It felt as though the earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for the whisper of wings that might cut through the silence and remind the world of its place in the vast, sacred balance. In that moment, one could feel the presence of something beyond the ordinary, a force that had watched humanity rise and stumble through the ages. The Thunderbird wasn't merely a story. It wasn't confined to myths or symbols etched in wood and stone. It was alive, pulsing in the veins of the earth and the hearts of those who dared to listen. The world doesn't just need the Thunderbird, it aches for it, in ways words alone cannot fully grasp. The Thunderbird story isn't just about power or awe, it's about connection. Its wings don't simply move through the sky, they bridge the seen and unseen, the known and the mysterious. The old tales say it brought rain to the parched and struck down the greedy, but its lessons ripple far deeper. In its cry, there is a call to remember who we are, where we come from, and what we owe to one another and the earth beneath our feet. A child once asked their grandfather, "Why does the Thunderbird roar?" The old man smiled, his weathered face softening. "It doesn't roar, little one. It speaks. But not everyone knows how to hear it." That simple wisdom stays with you, lingering long after the fire has died down and the stars have shifted in the sky. It's there in the quiet moments, the ones where you feel small yet infinite, standing on a mountaintop as the clouds roll in or walking through a forest where the air hums with life. You feel the Thunderbird in those fleeting, electric seconds, a reminder that the world is alive and that we are a part of it, not above it. But the Thunderbird is not just a guardian of nature, it's a keeper of the human spirit. In its story, we see resilience, not the kind that clings to the past out of fear, but the kind that carries forward what truly matters. The Thunderbird doesn't ask us to worship it. It asks us to listen, to act, and to care. It doesn't demand devotion, it inspires responsibility. In a time when humanity wrestles with what it has broken, oceans choked with plastic, skies heavy with smoke, lands stripped of their green, the Thunderbird's lessons feel more urgent than ever. Its cry is a wake-up call, not of judgment but of possibility. It reminds us that the power to heal lies within us, just as it lies within the storms. Somewhere, an artist dips their brush into rich, bold colors, capturing the Thunderbird in a way that no photograph ever could. In another corner of the world, a singer lets their voice soar, reaching notes that vibrate with the energy of the myth. These acts aren't just creations, they're offerings, tributes to something far greater than ourselves. Even now, as you read this, there's a part of you that feels it, that tingle in your chest, that quiet stirring that wonders what it would be like to stand under the Thunderbird's wings. To feel its shadow not as a threat but as a shelter, a promise that we are not alone in our struggles. It's easy to forget, in the chaos of modern life, that we're part of something vast and ancient. The Thunderbird doesn't let us forget. It insists that we remember. Not just with our minds, but with our actions, our choices, our stories. And when we do, it's not just the Thunderbird that is preserved, it's us. It's the best parts of us, the parts that honor what is sacred and fight for what is right. A storm is brewing on the horizon. Not one of destruction, but one of change. You can feel it in the way people are beginning to look back at old stories not as relics, but as guides. You can feel it in the way the younger generation speaks of justice, of renewal, of balance. And you can feel it in the silence that follows thunder, in the space where the Thunderbird's cry echoes longest. Perhaps that's the true gift of the Thunderbird, not its power or its majesty, but its reminder that even in the fiercest storms, there is beauty, purpose, and the chance to rise again. Its wings are wide enough to carry the weight of the world, but they do not fly for themselves. They fly for us, if only we have the courage to follow.